Chapter 689. The so-called miracle had yet to appear. However, as the time for the miracle to appear was getting closer and closer, the immortal world was in an uproar. Countless people continued to pour into Mojo. Under such circumstances, Morong Yu was beaming with joy. Now, other than killing evil men in Mojo City to earn star points, Morong Yu was also moving around the entire Mojo. There were simply too many people pouring into Mojo. There were so many that one would meet immortals casually on the streets. Moreover, all of them were very powerful. Half a year passed just like that. In this half a year, Morong Yu did not follow Jiao Li. Now that Jiao Li was protected by 3 immortal emperor experts, Morong Yu could not do anything to him. Of course, Morong Yu did not give up on monitoring Jiao Li. As long as he seized the opportunity, he would definitely kill Jiao Li. However, in this half a year, Morong Yu was not without any gains. His star points had successfully broken through the 20 billion mark. Although it was only a small portion of the 50 billion star points, many little drops made of mickle and dripping water could penetrate stone. At the same time, although Morong Yu did not break through, his power was more condensed and his combat strength was more powerful. Morong Yu even felt that he could fight against an ordinary mid-stage immortal emperor expert now. Of course, except for those experts who could kill people above their level. Bang! Morong Yu turned a late-stage immortal monarch evil man into a cloud of blood mist with a punch. Once again, he obtained a few 100,000 star points. Although there are many evil men in Mojo, they are too scattered. It is still easier to earn star points in Mojo City. I have left Mojo City for 3 months. It is time to go back. Morong Yu thought to himself. Then, he shook his hand and shattered the void. Then, he stepped into the depths of the void. Morong Yu constantly tore the void and traveled through space. In this half a year, Morong Yu did not use the Hichu Luoshu to teleport. Instead, he traveled through space continuously. Because of this, Morong Yu's control of space became stronger. The distance he traveled through space also became greater. Rumble. Just as Morong Yu was about to return to Mojo City, an extremely terrifying force suddenly descended from the sky. At that moment, the space of the entire Mo plane and even a few other nearby planes shattered like glass. Spatial fragments fell like raindrops. Bang! Morong Yu, who was shuttling through space, instantly suffered a heavy blow. It was as if a divine mountain was pressing down on his body. Instantly, Morong Yu was jolted out of the depths of the void. At the same time, the chi and blood in his body began to churn violently. What happened? Morong Yu was shaken out of the void. Looking around, his face immediately revealed a look of horror. At this moment, the space of the entire Mo prefecture and the surrounding prefectures had completely shattered. Crystal-like spatial fragments of various sizes constantly fell down. This is a spatial crystal fragment. Morong Yu waved his hand, and a millstone-sized spatial crystal fragment appeared in his hand. Spatial fragments were one of the main materials used to construct transportation formations. Back in the day, Morong Yu had almost gone bankrupt for a single one. Now, however, spatial fragments were raining down like raindrops. The small ones were like fine powder, while the large ones were as large as planets. Morong Yu immediately sent out the Hichu Luoshu and made a grasping motion with his hands. Instantly, countless spaces were sucked into the Hitu and Luoshu like a torrent. After today, the world of immortals would no longer lack spatial fragments. In fact, Morong Yu felt that transportation formations would spring up like bamboo shoots after a spring rain. After all, although the method to construct transportation formations had been lost, it was still impossible. There were definitely many others in the world who knew how to construct them. The reason transportation formations hadn't been popularized in the past was largely due to the lack of spatial fragments. But after today, there would be an unlimited supply of spatial fragments. There would definitely be some factions who would construct transportation formations and reap huge profits. Transporting people required transportation fees, And with so many people in the world of immortals, the daily cost of a transportation formation would be quite frightening. As Murong Yu collected spatial fragments, large hands soared into the sky and grabbed at them. However, none of these people were as fast as Murong Yu. While these people were collecting spatial fragments, Murong Yu had already collected 100, 1,000, or even more. After all, when a He-Tu and the Luo Shu were opened, hundreds of millions of spatial crystal fragments were collected in every instant. Furthermore, coupled with the power of space, the speed at which Murong Yu collected the spatial crystal fragments was simply unheard of. While collecting the spatial crystal fragments, Murong Yu looked at his surroundings. At this moment, the surrounding void was filled with waves of the smell of blood. In fact, Murong Yu even saw clouds of blood mist floating in the air. The originally tall and straight peaks that towered into the clouds had now been reduced to dust and flattened to the ground. Looking around, as far as the eye could see, it was a barren desert. The entire Emozhou was razed to the ground by that terrifying power just now. Murong Yu's face was filled with shock. That terrifying power just now had even caused spatial fragments to appear. One could only imagine how terrifying it was. Although this power didn't kill Murong Yu, there were still a large number of powerhouses in Emozhou City. However, these people were all extremely powerful individuals with powerful physical bodies. Most of the powerhouses below the Immortal King realm were killed. They were turned into clouds of blood mist and scattered between heaven and earth. There were still survivors among the 9 heavens, Xian immortals, and perfected golden immortals. None of the immortals below the perfected golden immortal realm survived. Of course, if there were powerhouses around to protect them at that time, some of them might have survived. However, most of the weaker ones in Emozhou were shattered along with some of the mountains. 60% of the people in the Mo province had been killed from the tremor earlier, while a considerable portion of the remaining 40% had been injured. What was that just now? Even an immortal prime isn't that terrifying. Murong Yu's face was filled with shock. Although an immortal prime powerhouse was powerful and terrifying and had the ability to destroy a large state, it was impossible for him to cause such great destruction. Moreover, that was just one blow. Could it be that a miracle has appeared? Murong Yu's heart skipped a beat, and he immediately soared into the sky. Rumble. Just as Murong Yu soared into the sky, a terrifying wave of beast-like power came from the direction of Emozhou City like a torrent. Wherever it passed, the void would shatter, and the spatial crystals would also turn into dust. In fact, Murong Yu even saw some of the weaker ones explode under the terrifying pressure. What a terrifying aura! Murong Yu's heart sank as he looked into the distance. At this moment, the torrent of aura had already bombarded Murong Yu's body like a stormy sea. It quickly surged into every inch of Murong Yu's skin and followed along his meridians towards his dantian. Murong Yu's face immediately changed. He snorted coldly in his heart, and the power that had surged into his body was instantly repelled. Then, a faint layer of film appeared on the surface of Murong Yu's body. The power was unable to enter Murong Yu's body. Murong Yu floated in the sky, his face filled with shock. Who on earth released this aura? Anyone below the Immortal King realm would have been directly shattered. This aura came from the direction of Emozhou City. Murong Yu looked into the distance, but couldn't see anything. Then, he put away the He-Tu Luo Shu. Just as he was about to teleport over, he was shocked to find that all the teleportation points in Emozhou City and even within Emozhou City were no longer effective. There is only one possibility for the teleportation points to be ineffective. It was that the teleportation points had been destroyed. With Murong Yu's current strength, even a monarch immortal would find it difficult to destroy the teleportation jade slip he created. Moreover, it was very hidden and difficult to discover. It seems that the relic really has appeared. Murong Yu wasn't shocked. Instead, he was overjoyed. Immediately, he leapt into the air and turned into a flash of black light that shot towards Emozhou City. At the same time, countless people also flocked towards Emozhou City. What is this? The closer Murong Yu got to Emozhou City, the more terrifying the aura became. However, it still couldn't suppress Moronyu. When Moronyu was about to reach Emojo City, a huge object appeared in front of him. What a big tomb! Is this the tomb of the gods? Not far away from Moronyu, an immortal emperor expert looked ahead with an incomparably shocked expression. His eyes were wide open and his mouth was wide open. In front of Moronyu and the others was an incomparably large tomb. This tomb was extremely huge. Just how big was it? Emojo City was 10 times bigger than Feng City. Feng City was about half the size of Huaxia's cultivation world. In other words, Emojo City was many times bigger than Huaxia's cultivation world. But now, the huge city had disappeared. Along with the hundreds of millions of immortals in the city, they had been crushed into powder by the tomb that had appeared out of thin air. In front of this tomb, Emojo City was just a small dot, the tip of the iceberg. Looking from afar, this great tomb covered a small half of Emo Province, as well as the other 3 provinces bordering Emo Province. In other words, this tomb was almost the size of Emojo. Hundreds of millions of Huaxia's cultivation world. What kind of concept was that? Shocking, absolutely shocking. At this moment, everyone who saw the tomb, including Moronyu, was deeply shocked. The visual impact was too great. Even though they were powerful, they were still shocked to the point that they couldn't react in time. Chapter 690. The Divine Tomb. It had to be the Divine Tomb. What ancient ruins? What godly miracles? In front of this enormous tomb, all of them paled in comparison. Apart from the Divine Tomb, what else could compare to it? The tomb of an immortal, or even a venerated immortal, couldn't possibly be so enormous and imposing. Only a god high up in the heavens would be able to do so. From a distance, the tomb seemed to be as tall as the heavens. It sat on the ground like a prehistoric monster, exuding an aura of primordial terror. The pressure weighed heavily on everyone. After half a day's worth of buffer time, everyone recovered from their initial shock. At this moment, Moronyu finally understood how the Divine Tomb had appeared. It had fallen from the sky. It hadn't popped up from the ground, but had fallen from the sky. It had appeared out of thin air and crushed Mo province, as well as several cities in the nearby provinces. A total of 4 cities had been crushed to dust. Trillions of immortals had died unjustly. Moronyu couldn't help but rejoice when he heard this. Thank goodness he'd left Mo province earlier. Otherwise, he would have been crushed to death by the Divine Tomb. Rumor had it that the tomb's descent had been so brief that even the top experts hadn't been able to react in time. Of the trillions of immortals in Mo province, less than 1 in 100 million had managed to escape. Even venerated immortal realm experts had been crushed to death by the Divine Tomb. They'd been in the midst of cultivation and hadn't realized what was going on before they'd been crushed to death. They died unjustly. Trillions of immortals had been crushed to death, and countless immortals in Mo province and the nearby provinces had been killed when the Divine Tomb descended. The descent of the Divine Tomb had likely killed more than 100 trillion immortals. And that was the most conservative estimate. If Moronyu had killed 100 trillion immortals, he would have received several dozen trillion stars, even if he hadn't gotten 100 trillion stars. Moronyu took to the air after figuring this out. He began searching for the entrance to the Divine Tomb. At the same time, countless people also flew over, looking for the entrance to the Great Tomb. Not long after, when Moronyu reached the other side of the God's Tomb, he finally found a huge entrance. However, there were already countless immortals gathered in front of the entrance. They were divided into different groups, each with a clear distinction. Moronyu even saw the young master of the Immortal Palace, Yu Xian, and the young master of the Holy Gate, Ling Chun. In addition to them, there were also people from various major forces standing in front of the entrance of the tomb of the God of Sin, facing each other. They seemed to be competing for the right to enter the tomb. It was clearly a gathering of the major powers of the immortal world. At this moment, the people here were basically certain that this was a tomb of the gods. Moreover, this tomb of the gods must have a great background. The level of the gods buried in the tomb of the gods should not be low, and they should be very powerful. Otherwise, how could an ordinary deity be so impressive? This kind of tomb was probably rare even in the heaven realm, not to mention in the immortal world. It could even be said that this was the first time such a tomb had appeared in the immortal world. The more powerful the expert buried in the tomb of the god of sin was, the more and more powerful the things buried in the tomb of the god of sin were. There should be a lot of divine weapons, divine pills, and various other things. And now, there was a problem. Whether it was the immortal palace, the devil's sect, the holy gate, or other forces, they were all eyeing this tomb of the god of sin covetously, wanting to take it for themselves. However, it was impossible for the other forces to let one force monopolize it. If so, a terrifying war would definitely break out. Every force wanted to monopolize the tomb of the god of sin, but there was no such powerful force in the immortal world. When Muronyu arrived here, he saw that the forces such as the immortal palace, the devil's sect, and other forces had already joined forces. The immortal palace, the devil's sect, the holy gate, and the heavenly Punisher palace have decided to explore the tomb of the god of sin. All the disciples of these four forces and their affiliated forces can enter the tomb of the god of sin to explore. Except for these four sects, if anyone barges in, they will be killed without mercy. Not long after Muronyu arrived here, a voice spread far and wide. Even in the noisy crowd, it rang clearly in everyone's ears. The tomb of the god of sin is a great tomb that fell from the heaven realm. It doesn't belong to your four forces. What right do you have to monopolize it? At this moment, a disdainful voice was heard. The four forces are powerful when they join forces, but can they be more powerful than the common people in the world? Another voice was heard. Who is it? The expert from the immortal palace who spoke before roared and soared into the sky. At the same time, a surging aura burst out, rushing straight to the sky, sweeping in all directions and shocking the world. The oppressive aura shook all living beings. It was very powerful. This was an expert of the immortal prime realm. Muronyu frowned. It's me. A faint voice was heard. At the same time, more than a dozen figures soared into the sky. Rumble. More than a dozen experts stood together. Even if they didn't deliberately release a powerful aura, the aura that was emitted was still very powerful. Standing in the same place, the void around them was constantly rippling, as if it could be shattered at any time. More than a dozen immortal primes. Muronyu's eyes were filled with horror. Yes, these experts who soared into the sky were all experts of the immortal prime realm. With more than a dozen immortal primes working together, although the immortal world was big, they could almost do whatever they wanted. Seeing this scene, the face of the immortal prime from the immortal palace instantly turned gloomy. Although he was also an expert of the immortal prime realm, if the other party swarmed him, he wouldn't be a match at all. He was afraid that he would be killed directly. The face of the immortal prime from the immortal palace turned gloomy, but soon he smiled and said, "Of course, the tomb of the god of sin doesn't belong to our four sections. However, as everyone knows, this is a tomb of the god of sin, the burial place of the immortals of the heaven realm. There must be a lot of dangers inside. These dangers can easily kill immortals. We're just protecting your lives." Shameless. Hearing the words of the immortal prime, most of the people present had these two thoughts. It should be known that in addition to the dangers in the tomb, there were also divine weapons, divine pills, and the like. The four major forces clearly wanted to monopolize these treasures, but they made it sound so nice. Cut the crap. Just say one thing. Can we enter the tomb of the god of sin? The immortal prime who spoke before shouted, interrupting the words of the immortal palace's immortal prime. At the same time, a huge aura burst out, filled with murderous intent. It seemed that if the expert of the immortal palace said no, they would attack, regardless of whether he was from the immortal palace or the devil sect, directly kill him. Haha, fellow Taoist, of course you can enter. At the same time, all experts of the immortal prime realm can enter the tomb of the god of sin. Our four major forces can't stop you, because you have the power to protect yourself. However, fellow Taoists below the immortal prime realm can't enter. Otherwise, we will kill without mercy." The immortal palace venerable glanced at the crowd and continued, "Of course, if you want to enter the tomb of the god of sin, you can join our immortal palace and become a subordinate force of our immortal palace, or directly become our disciple. Shameless, too shameless." This guy obviously wanted to strengthen the strength of the immortal palace at this time. Now, many people and forces didn't dare to clash with the four major forces, but they also wanted to enter the tomb of the god of sin. If they chose to join the immortal palace now, they would be qualified to enter the tomb of the god of sin, become a subordinate force of the devil sect, or join the devil sect. You can enter the tomb of the god of sin to explore. Sacred sect. After the immortal prime expert of the immortal palace spoke, the remaining three major forces also spoke. They couldn't let the immortal palace dominate. You can take your time to recruit disciples. We'll go in first. The figures of the dozens of immortal primes in the void swayed, turned into a ray of light, and shot into the tomb of the god of sin. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Almost at the same time, the experts of the four major forces, including the immortal palace, also rushed into the tomb of the god of sin. After these top experts, immortal emperors, immortal monarchs, immortal kings, and experts of other realms also rushed in. In an instant, hundreds of millions of people rushed into the immortal palace. Now, there were several trillions of people gathered outside the entrance of the tomb of the god of sin. During these years, there were also immortal primes and many immortals below the immortal king realm. Suddenly, there was a burst of screams from the entrance. Everyone was shocked, and their faces were immediately filled with horror. At the entrance of the tomb of the god of sin, clouds of blood mist burst out. The immortals who had just stepped into the entrance of the tomb of the god of sin suddenly exploded. In an instant, millions of people were directly blasted into powder. This is... Murongyu's eyes flashed with a cold light. He saw that those who were blasted in a blood mist and killed were all below the immortal king realm. Immortal kings are not allowed to enter the tomb of the god of sin. At this time, an immortal prime roared. Immediately, countless people below the immortal king realm stopped in their tracks, not daring to enter the tomb of the god of sin. Whoosh! Countless figures flew into the tomb of the god of sin. This time, no one was killed. Obviously, if immortals below the immortal king realm approached the tomb of the god of sin, they would be killed. Only immortal king realm experts would not be blasted to death. Could it be the restriction of the tomb of the god of sin? Murongyu's heart stirred. With a flash, he shot toward the entrance of the tomb of the god of sin. "You're courting death." At this moment, a furious roar sounded. Then, a huge fist like a divine mountain shattered the void and fiercely bombarded Murongyu's head, wanting to kill Murongyu. Chapter 691. A cold light flashed in Murongyu's eyes as he threw out a punch. Boom! After an earth-shattering explosion, Murongyu's figure remained standing in the same spot, unmoving. However, another figure was sent flying. It was a bald, middle-aged man with a fierce face. His strength had reached the early stage of the immortal emperor realm. However, compared to ordinary people, his strength was very strong. Unfortunately, he met Murongyu. This person should be from the immortal palace. Murongyu saw him fighting in the immortal palace's formation before. "You dare to attack me? Are you courting death?" Murongyu's face was cold as killing intent burst out. At the same time, his body swayed and turned into a ray of light as he rushed towards the bald man. During this process, Murongyu directly burst out with the dragon elephant prajna technique and threw out 7 moves in a row. Vast and continuous, like a raging tide, they strangled towards the bald man. The bald man was sent flying by Murongyu, a puny immortal king. At this time, he was still in shock and anger. He saw Murongyu strike out a terrifying force that could destroy heaven and earth. It sealed the surrounding void and attacked him crazily. Immediately, the bald man's face changed drastically. With a roar, he instantly burst out his strength to the limit and threw out hundreds of punches towards Murongyu. Bang! 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 The strength of both sides kept colliding with each other, bursting out terrifying auras. The void was torn apart by them. The bald man was no match for Murong-Yu at all. The power he threw out was constantly shattered by Murong-Yu. The bald man roared in anger as he was constantly pushed back. "Die!" Murong-Yu roared. His body swayed and immediately turned into a ray of light as he rushed through the hundreds of millions of forces. Then, he slammed his palm on the bald man's chest. Bang! After a muffled sound, the bald man's entire chest was shattered by Murong-Yu's palm. With a puff, the bald man spat out a mouthful of blood. Moreover, blood spurted out from his 7 orifices, and there were even fragments of his internal organs. "You?" The bald man stared at Murong-Yu in horror, his face filled with disbelief. Murong-Yu snorted in his heart as he slammed his other hand on the bald man's head. With a puff, the bald man's head was smashed like a rotten watermelon. An expert of the early stage of the immortal Emperor realm was killed by Murong-Yu in a short moment. In fact, Murong-Yu hadn't even used any divine weapons. Murong-Yu's strength was much stronger than before. At least could fight with experts of the middle stage immortal Emperor realm. "How dare you? You're courting death." From the moment Murong-Yu flew over to the bald man, attacking Murong-Yu, to the moment Murong-Yu killed the bald man, all of this happened in the span of an instant. Only then did the surrounding people react to what had happened. Angry shouts could be heard as Murong-Yu felt that he had been locked on by many divine thoughts. The people who were locked on were the people of the Immortal Palace. As for the people of the Devil Sect, the Holy Sect, and the Heavenly Punisher Palace, they just looked on coldly. "Let's see who dares to attack me." Murong-Yu floated in the void as he looked coldly at those who wanted to attack him. At the same time, an identity token of the Heavenly Punisher Palace appeared in his hand. People of the Heavenly Punisher Palace? Seeing the token in Murong-Yu's hand, those who wanted to attack Murong-Yu hesitated. Although the Immortal Palace was strong, the Heavenly Punisher Palace was not weak. "Since you are a disciple of the Heavenly Punisher Palace, why did you attack the people of the Immortal Palace? Do you know that the 4 major forces are now in an alliance?" An expert in the intermediate stage of the Immortal Emperor realm looked at Murong-Yu and said with murderous intent. Murong-Yu looked at the Immortal Emperor as if he was looking at an idiot. After a long time, he said, "Idiot." The Immortal Emperor of the Immortal Palace was furious. He took a step forward and locked on to Murong-Yu with his divine thoughts. He was about to attack. Murong-Yu did not care about this at all. Although this expert in the intermediate stage of the Immortal Emperor realm was strong, it was impossible for him to kill him. "I was just defending myself." Who asked you people of the Immortal Palace to be so arrogant? You only have yourself to blame for being killed. Murong-Yu said indifferently. Hearing this, the people of the Immortal Palace looked at Murong-Yu with murderous intent. However, Murong-Yu did not feel anything at all. "You didn't reveal your identity first. Any one of us has the right to stop you." What a joke. Did your people give me the chance to reveal my identity? As soon as I came over, that bald man directly attacked me. If it wasn't for my carelessness, wouldn't an ordinary disciple of the Heavenly Penalty Palace have already been killed? You're not stopping me. You want to take the opportunity to kill the people of the other major forces. Murong-Yu said coldly. The people of the Immortal Palace were furious. Each of them wanted to attack, but they were afraid of Murong-Yu's strength. Moreover, some people of the Heavenly Penalty Palace also came over and looked at them coldly. If they dared to attack, it would probably cause a war between the two sides. Well, if there's nothing else, I'll go in first. Let me warn the people of the Immortal Palace one last time. Don't kill me. Otherwise, you'll end up like the bald man. While speaking, Murong-Yu's figure flashed and shot towards the divine tomb. Seeing Murong-Yu's figure disappear into the divine tomb, the people of the Immortal Palace were still fierce and murderous. Senior brother, are we just going to let him go like this? Let him go? How is that possible? The divine tomb is full of dangers. Even an immortal venerable can die, let alone an immortal king. This kid is too arrogant. The divine tomb is his burial place. The people of the Immortal Palace laughed sinisterly and launched a conspiracy against Morongyu. However, Morongyu didn't care. In the face of absolute strength, conspiracies and tricks were just fleeting clouds. Moreover, Morongyu entered the divine tomb to look for treasures and kill people. The people of the Immortal Palace, the Devil Sect, and the Sacred Sect all had to be killed. Especially the people of the Immortal Palace. He really wanted to kill everyone he saw. Otherwise, he wouldn't have killed the bald man just now. What a heavy pressure. When Morongyu approached the entrance of the divine tomb, he was shocked. The pressure of the divine tomb was very strong. Experts below the Immortal King realm couldn't bear it at all. Anyone who was below the Immortal King realm would be crushed by the pressure. In fact, when he saw those immortals exploding, Morongyu had already guessed that this was the reason. Therefore, he wasn't shocked because of this. The reason why he was shocked was because he realized that the pressure came from the power of the divine tomb. This is God Essence power? Morongyu was shocked. This power was different from the immortal essence power of the immortal world. It was much higher than immortal essence power. Whether it was the level or quality, it was stronger than immortal essence power. It was equivalent to immortal essence power in heaven and earth spirit chi in the cultivation world. If a cultivator who hadn't completely transformed into an immortal body entered the immortal world, he would immediately be crushed by the immortal essence power. And these people who were crushed when they got close to the entrance of the divine tomb were the same as the cultivators who entered the immortal world. They were all crushed by the God Essence power. But this God Essence power is too thin. Otherwise, if it was like the God Essence power of the heaven realm, I'm afraid that even immortal Emperor realm experts would be crushed. Morongyu thought in his heart. He also had God Pulse. He also had some understanding of God Essence power. Moreover, he also had Hichu. I wonder what's in the divine tomb. So many people have gone in, but there's no movement at all. Morongyu pondered as he took a step forward. Shwa. Just as Morongyu stepped into the entrance of the divine tomb, a strong force directly wrapped around him. Then, before Morongyu could react, he was pulled in. Morongyu was shocked. Just as he was about to use his strength to break the force, the scene in front of him changed. Then he found that he was in a grassland. Grassland? Seeing the endless grassland, Morongyu's eyes revealed a look of disbelief. What's going on? Didn't I enter the divine tomb? Why did I appear in this grassland? Could it be that I was teleported to another space? However, this shouldn't be the immortal world. This faint God Essence power, the immortal world doesn't have such a place. The grassland was filled with God Essence power. Morongyu felt that if an ordinary immortal king entered here, he would probably be suppressed by the huge pressure and unable to fly. Just like people who had just ascended to the immortal world, they couldn't fly in the immortal world. Only after reaching the golden immortal realm could they fly. Most importantly, ordinary immortals couldn't absorb the God Essence power here. Their bodies and meridians couldn't withstand the strength of the God Essence power. Once the God Essence power entered their bodies, they would immediately explode and die. Is this another space of the divine tomb, or have I been teleported to another space? Morongyu thought in his heart. He was about to leave this place and explore. However, at this moment, with a schwa sound, a figure appeared beside him. This was a young man in his 20s, an early-stage immortal monarch. Looking at his attire, he should be from the Immortal Palace. Kid, who are you? Seeing that he was teleported to this grassland, the immortal monarch was obviously shocked. After sizing up the surroundings, he looked at Morongyu with a sinister smile. As he spoke, he threw a punch at Morongyu. Morongyu shook his head. You don't know what's good for you. At the same time, he pointed out. The young man laughed sinisterly. His strength exploded, and he quickly attacked. Puff! A force shot out from Morongyu's fingertip and fiercely bombarded the young man's fist. Instantly, the young man let out a blood-curdling scream. His entire arm had been crushed into fine powder by the force of the punch, and that force pointed at the young man's head without any obstruction. Then, under the young man's shocked expression, his entire head was instantly blasted into powder. These days, There are so many people who don't know what's good for them. Moronyu shook his head. Then he soared into the sky and shot into the distance. Soon, he disappeared into the distant horizon. Chapter 692. The grassland was extremely vast and boundless. One couldn't even see the end of it. After Moronyu left his original spot, he flew for half a day, but he still wasn't out of the grassland. The vast grassland was boundless. In fact, what made Moronyu frown was that this space had a huge suppression on his spiritual will. In fact, his spiritual will couldn't even reach as far as his vision. This also meant that Morongyu's spiritual will couldn't see as far as his eyes. His power was suppressed, his spiritual will was suppressed, and there was only God elemental energy everywhere. Moronyu even had the illusion that he had entered the God world. Of course, this couldn't be the God world. In the God world, even the place with the least amount of God elemental energy would be tens of thousands of times denser than here. Given Morongyu's current strength, if he appeared in the real God world, even if his fleshly body didn't collapse, he wouldn't be able to move an inch. The God world was also the heaven world. Could this space be an independent space? Is it one of the countless spaces in the God tomb? Or maybe there's only one huge space, and I'm here? The grassland was simply too vast and boundless. Moronyu flew for half a day but still couldn't leave. This caused him to have even more doubts in his heart. Before Moronyu, there were countless immortals who entered the God tomb, and in this half a day, Moronyu didn't meet a second person other than the immortal monarch that he met at the start. If Moronyu didn't appear in an independent space, then it meant that the space he was in was extremely huge. Otherwise, how could hundreds of millions of people who entered not appear by Morongyu's side? This God tomb is too strange. This space is also rather strange. Even the Hichu Luo Shu can't open it. Even the Tian Fa token can't open it. Morongyu's face was slightly gloomy. Just now, he tried to communicate with the Hichu Luo Shu and the Tian Fa token, but found that he couldn't open them. The suppression here was extremely severe. Of course, this was also Morongyu's own problem. If he was stronger, then he would be able to open the Hichu Luo Shu and the Heavenly Punishment Order. After all, even though this tomb was powerful, it was far inferior to the Heavenly Punishment Decree and Hichu Luo Shu. However, although Hichu Luo Shu and the Heavenly Punishment Order were powerful, Moronyu did not have enough strength, so it was useless. Perhaps there really is a divine artifact here. Moronyu continued to fly. At the same time, he extended his divine consciousness out. However, what disappointed him was that there were all kinds of plants in the prairie, but they were all ordinary plants. There were no divine medicines or immortal medicines. Zap, zap. Suddenly, an ear-piercing sound pierced through the air and entered Moronyu's ears. At this moment, Moronyu felt an extremely strong sense of danger rise from the bottom of his heart. Without any hesitation, Moronyu sent a backhand slap at the old man. Bang! After an earth-shattering sound, Moronyu was directly sent flying. During this process, Moronyu also turned around and looked at the person who had attacked him. A grasshopper? When he saw clearly who had attacked him, Moronyu could not help but exclaim. In front of him, a grasshopper the size of a water buffalo that was completely black but faintly glowing with a golden light was sent flying by his power. Moronyu looked at the grasshopper that had been sent flying by him with a look of surprise. Moronyu is no stranger to grasshoppers. In the mortal world, there were such pests in rice fields. However, those grasshoppers were generally only the size of a pinky finger. The grasshopper in front of Moronyu was the size of a water buffalo. Its body exuded a fierce and cruel aura. The difference between it and an ordinary grasshopper was too great. The grasshopper's pair of black wings were like two incomparably huge blades. They constantly flapped. Every time they flapped, a crack would appear in the void. The grasshopper's two antennae were even more terrifying. They were like incomparably sharp divine weapons. Moronyu believed that an ordinary immortal lord would be directly shredded to pieces by these two antennae. In addition, This grasshopper had more than 10 pairs of legs. Each of them was strong and powerful. Even an immortal lord would be crushed by a single claw. The most terrifying thing was the two hind legs behind the grasshopper that exuded a terrifying aura. Murong-Yu estimated that these two hind legs were comparable to emperor weapons. Emperor weapons. There were not many emperor weapons in the immortal world. This grasshopper's two legs were comparable to emperor weapons. This was truly terrifying. This should be the grasshopper's natal weapon, Murong-Yu thought to himself. This grasshopper had already reached the early stage immortal emperor realm. Squeak. At this moment, the grasshopper had already stabilized its body. It let out an incomparably sharp squeak, following which its blade-like wings flashed in the void. With a squeak, the grasshopper turned into a flash of black light and pounced towards Murong-Yu. Murong-Yu also saw that the void here, which was several times stronger than the immortal world, was shattered by the grasshopper's wings. The grasshopper was extremely fast. In an instant, it had rushed to Murong-Yu's side. During this process, its two antennae viciously slammed towards Murong-Yu. At the same time, its 10 pairs of legs shattered the void and viciously slashed towards Murong-Yu. Murong-Yu even saw the grasshopper open its huge mouth, revealing terrifying sharp fangs, and viciously biting towards him. It seemed that this grasshopper was not a vegetarian. It was a carnivore. Good timing. Murong-Yu roared. His divine fist was invincible. He was not afraid at all as he unleashed the 1,000-army elephant drawing fist. Boom! The two sides ruthlessly slammed into each other. The terrifying impact instantly swept in all directions. The nearby void emitted a sound similar to a scream as it was directly torn apart and shattered. Bang! Bang! Wait! A powerful force surged into Murong-Yu's body, forcing him to continuously step in the void and retreat. Every time Murong-Yu took a step forward, the void would explode from his guesses. On the other hand, the grasshopper was once again sent flying by Murong-Yu. Although the grasshopper was strong in terms of strength, it was no match for Murong-Yu. However, Murong-Yu also realized that although his two attacks had forced the grasshopper to retreat, he did not seem to have injured it. What a beast! Your defensive power is so terrifying. Murong-Yu waved his right hand. His arm was slightly numb from the impact of the punch just now. But I'd like to see what you're capable of. Murong-Yu roared. Using the army formula, he turned into a phantom and pounced towards the grasshopper. The grasshopper wasn't willing to be outdone. It let out another unpleasant cry and pounced forward, engaging in a fierce battle with Murong-Yu. Rumble! Murong-Yu did not use any magic treasures, weapons, or the power of space. He was completely using his physical strength to fight the grasshopper. Suddenly, Murong-Yu let out a long howl and kicked the grasshopper away. What a beast! What a strong defensive power! However, I'd like to see if you can withstand my strongest attack. Murong-Yu's fighting spirit soared as he charged towards the grasshopper again. Dragon Elephant Wave Art, Tiger Roar Imperial Fist, Black Tortoise Scripture, Great Vajra Chakra Seal, Outer Lion Seal, Sun Chakra Seal. In the long howl, Murong-Yu used almost all of his combat skills. Suddenly, the grasshopper had no strength to fight back and was completely reduced to Murong-Yu's punching bag. However, what shocked Murong-Yu was that the grasshopper's defensive power was too terrifying. Murong-Yu's fists were sore from all the fighting, but the grasshopper still hadn't been killed. In fact, Murong-Yu saw that not all of his attacks had blasted into the grasshopper's body. Otherwise, no matter how strong the grasshopper was, it would have been shocked to death by his violent strength. On the outside of the grasshopper was a layer of hard skin that was as hard as divine iron. It protected the grasshopper firmly like an armor. When Murong-Yu's attacks landed on the grasshopper's body, the grasshopper's skin flickered with a layer of faint golden light. Then, most of Murong-Yu's power was transferred away. Good heavens! This set of hard skin is probably not inferior to a set of Emperor weapon armor. In fact, it's even more terrifying than an Emperor weapon armor. I must kill him today and obtain this set of hard skin. If I can refine it into an armor, I won't be defeated immediately even if I face an immortal sovereign. Murong made up his mind and howled again and again. Asterisk rumble. Asterisk, an even more violent and terrifying aura erupted from Murong body. At this moment, Murong strength had already been raised to the limit. With the addition of the Do character art, Murong strength had been doubled. In other words, Murong originally only had 100,000 units of coiling dragon power. But now, his strength had increased to 200,000 units of coiling dragon power. 100,000 coiling dragons wasn't as simple as doubling one's strength. It was more than 20 times. Thump, thump, thump. Under Murong's violent attacks, the grasshopper had no strength to fight back at all. Omnidirectional kill. Murong suddenly roared and unleashed a terrifying power with his fists. He rushed in front of the grasshopper and slammed his fists into its body. Thump, thump, thump. Earth-shaking explosions rang out from the grasshopper's body. Clouds of bloody mist spurted out of its mouth, and the grasshopper's body swayed and fell to the ground. Murong grabbed the grasshopper with his large hand. Good heavens, killing an early-stage immortal emperor isn't even that difficult. Murong couldn't help but sigh. In truth, Murong could easily kill an early-stage immortal emperor with his current strength. If the grasshopper didn't have this layer of hard skin, Murong would have killed it long ago. However, this layer of hard skin was like a tortoise's shell, firmly protecting the grasshopper within Murong's body. Murong's attacks couldn't do any effective damage to the grasshopper. In the end, Murong found an opportunity and unleashed a killer move, blasting his power into the grasshopper's body and destroying it in one fell swoop. Otherwise, Murong wouldn't have been able to kill this monster in a short time. Chapter 693. This space is strange and full of unknown dangers. Why don't I refine this hard skin into a set of armor to increase my strength? Murong pondered as he looked at the hard skin in his hand. Then, he summoned the yin-yang cauldron and began refining. Murong's physical body had reached the level of a royal weapon, and he had all sorts of powerful treasures, such as the Hichu Luoshu on him. His defenses were extremely strong. However, since he couldn't enter the Hichu Luoshu or the Heavenly Punishment Decree, Murong was in a lot of danger. After all, he couldn't enter the Hichu Luoshu if he encountered any danger. He could only rely on his own strength. Although Murong was strong, his cultivation level was still low. He was only an immortal king, so he wouldn't be a match for a powerful immortal emperor. If he encountered an immortal sovereign, Murong's body would be smashed to pieces with a single slap. Moreover, apart from those from the world of immortals, the monsters in this space weren't weak either. In short, this space gave Murong a sense of danger. The hard skin of the grasshopper was as hard as divine metal. Murong couldn't break it even with all his might. Ordinary people would find it difficult to refine it, even if they were immortal sovereigns. Fortunately, Murong had the yin-yang cauldron. The cauldron's yin-yang fire could burn the world down. There was nothing it couldn't burn. Of course, this depended on Murong's strength. The stronger Murong was, the more terrifying the yin-yang fire would be. However, the current yin-yang fire was enough to refine the hard skin of the grasshopper. Murong carefully controlled the fire to refine the hard skin of the grasshopper. Under his refinement, the hard skin of the grasshopper gradually melted and turned into a lump of molten iron. However, what surprised Murong was that the back legs of the grasshopper didn't melt like the rest of its body. Although it's not as strong as an ordinary imperial weapon, it's still equivalent to an imperial weapon. It's not a bad idea to refine them into two weapons. Murong muttered to himself as he began to control the shape of the melted grasshopper's skin, transforming it into the shape he had in mind. Half a day later, the armor finally took shape. However, Murong did not stop there. Instead, he focused his yin-yang flames to refine the two hind legs. Its hind legs were extremely sturdy, like a divine artifact. It was able to withstand the yin-yang fire head-on without being burned. However, Morong discovered that the two hind legs were still shrinking under the burning of yin-yang fire. It wasn't refined, but the impurities in the hind leg were burned away. Finally, after another half a day, the two hind legs that were originally several meters long had been refined to the size of a palm. Looking from afar, they were flickering with cold light and were filled with terrifying power. At the same time, Morong grabbed the armor that had already taken shape. He opened his mouth and spat out boundless yin-yang flames. Fuse. After the armor turned back into liquid, Morong roared in his heart and directly fused the two hind legs into the arms of the armor, becoming one with the armor perfectly. This is the final and most crucial step. Insert all kinds of powerful formations. Morong growled as he waved his hands, inserting one formation after another into the armor. In fact, even if Morong didn't insert the formations, his armor could be considered to have been successfully refined. It was as powerful as the original one on the grasshopper's body. However, that wasn't all Morong needed. He needed an even more powerful armor. Offensive formations, defensive formations, spirit-absorbing formations, all kinds of formations were inserted into the armor by Morong. Morong wasn't proficient in weapon refinement and wasn't very familiar with formations. However, under the influence of Hichu, a formation master, he could be considered a formation master. Therefore, he was able to learn all kinds of formations at will. When Morong inserted 999,999 formations, Morong roared his heart. Unparalleled divine armor form. Rumble. Before Morong finished speaking, a dazzling divine light suddenly exploded from the armor. At the same time, a vast and powerful aura exploded from the armor, causing the surrounding space to tremble. What a powerful armor! It's probably much stronger than ordinary Emperor weapons, Morong said excitedly as he looked at the armor that was emitting a powerful aura. After all, this was his first attempt at weapon refinement, and he had succeeded. Moreover, his creation seemed to be very powerful. Morong was naturally delighted. Conceal your aura. Return to the original state. Morong suddenly exhaled. Immediately, the divine light on the armor disappeared, and the powerful aura disappeared as well. Following that, an ordinary-looking black armor appeared before Morong's eyes. Morong made a grabbing motion in the air and caught the armor. This armor is definitely above Emperor weapons, but it's probably not a divine artifact. It should be a pseudo-divine artifact, Morong said in his heart as he sensed the powerful aura emitted from the armor. A pseudo-divine artifact was above Emperor weapons, but not a divine artifact. It was almost between Emperor weapons and divine artifacts. It was much stronger than ordinary Emperor weapons, but not a divine artifact. After all, no matter how powerful it was still a pseudo-divine artifact. This should be caused by the unique environment here. It has a bit of divinity, Morong said calmly. Morong knew that this pseudo-divine artifact was not because of his powerful weapon refinement skills. In fact, the grasshopper's hard skin was much stronger than ordinary Emperor weapons. With a thought, the armor that was connected to Morong's mind turned into a black light and appeared on Morong's body. Then, Morong's entire body was covered in black armor. Aside from his eyes, there wasn't a single part of him that was exposed. So powerful. Now, I won't even be injured by a slap from an immortal reverend expert. It won't be easy for a late-stage immortal emperor expert to injure me. Looking at the shining armor on his body and feeling the power of the armor, Morong laughed loudly. If I use these two emperor weapons, I might even be able to kill a mid-stage immortal emperor expert. Morong looked at his hands. Clang! Suddenly, two items that shone with cold light, like sharp swords, appeared in his hands. These two items were the hind legs of the grasshopper that Morong had refined. At this moment, they had become a terrifying killing weapon that was connected to the armor. You're the first armor that I've successfully refined. Then, from now on, you'll be called Feather Armor. Ha ha! Morong laughed. Suddenly, he soared into the sky and shot forward. A pseudo-divine artifact armor and weapon. It's much stronger than an emperor weapon. I wonder if there are other similar grasshoppers. If I kill a large number of them, I can increase the strength of Jiqing, Shenzhen, the Heavenly Court, and the Celestial Palace. Murong Yu thought to himself as he flew through the grassland at full speed. There's a grasshopper in front. Suddenly, a grasshopper the size of a buffalo appeared in Murong Yu's line of sight. Immediately, he was overjoyed. He turned into a stream of light and rushed forward. Chi! Murong Yu used his hand as a knife and slashed down. Contrary to Murong Yu's expectations, when he slashed down with his blade, a huge gash appeared on the grasshopper. Stinky blood spurted out from the wound. The grasshopper let out a shrill cry. It turned around and fought with Murong Yu. Strange, why is it so weak? Murong Yu was puzzled. At the same time, he threw a punch at the grasshopper. Bang! Murong Yu's punch landed on the grasshopper's back. In an instant, Murong Yu saw a huge wound appear on the grasshopper. Even the hard skin had been shattered by the tremors. What's going on? Murong Yu's heart was filled with doubt, but his hands didn't stop there. Punch after punch violently bombarded the grasshopper. Finally, the grasshopper could no longer endure Murong Yu's storm-like attacks. With a bang, it was smashed to pieces by Murong Yu's fist. It's not because I've become too strong, nor is it because of the feather armor. Then there's only one possibility. Could it be that the hard skin on these grasshoppers' body isn't as strong as it is? Murong Yu pondered. His body rose into the air again as he continued to search for the grasshopper. The grassland was huge, and there were very few grasshoppers. However, Murong Yu still found a dozen. However, what made Murong Yu a little depressed was that after killing more than a dozen grasshoppers in a row, the skin on these grasshoppers wasn't as tough as the first one he encountered. Some of these grasshoppers were only in the Immortal Monarch realm, while some were in the early stage of the Immortal Emperor realm. Each of them was very strong. Even an ordinary early stage Immortal Emperor realm expert would not have a good time here. However, they were still easily killed by Murong Yu. Maybe the grasshopper from before mutated. That's why the armor became so strong. Although these grasshoppers' hard skin is comparable to an Emperor weapon, it's not even comparable to an Emperor weapon. Forget it. Let's get out of this grassland first. I don't even know where I am. There's no way back. Murong Yu looked around. At this moment, he was still in the grassland. It was vast and boundless, and he had no sense of direction. Immediately, Murong Yu identified a direction and flew over. It was worth mentioning that Murong Yu had been in this grassland for many days. However, other than the Immortal Monarch at the beginning, he did not meet anyone else. Murong Yu could not help but suspect that he had entered an independent space. Rumble. Just as Murong Yu was suspecting, suddenly, a terrifying energy fluctuation came from afar. It was accompanied by an earth-shattering sound. Someone's fighting. Murong Yu's eyes lit up. He immediately flew forward at full speed. Not long after, he saw the people fighting in front of him. To be exact, it was a group of people. At this moment, these people were fighting in a chaotic battle. Chapter 694. What a good opportunity. Seeing these people fighting, Murong Yu couldn't help but smile. The people in front of him were all Murong Yu's acquaintances. Usually, it was Yu Xian, the young master of the Immortal Palace, and on the other side were experts from the Heavenly Punisher Palace. Moreover, it was none other than Jiao Li and the others. It was just that he didn't know why they were fighting. However, Murong Yu's current situation would only benefit from it. As for whether Murong Yu should go up and help, he was also a member of the Heavenly Punisher Palace. What a joke. The people of the Heavenly Punisher Palace wanted him dead. Why would he go up and help? On the contrary, this was definitely the best opportunity to kill Jiao Li. This poor child's strength was too low. He was only in the Immortal King realm. There was no room for him to get involved in this chaotic battle. He couldn't even fly. Jiao Li must be killed. However, the young master of the Immortal Palace also wants to kill him. Murong Yu looked in front of him from afar and muttered to himself. The young master of the Immortal Palace was very powerful. He had already reached the late stage of the Immortal Emperor realm. Murong Yu's current strength was not enough to kill him. However, if things continued to develop, both sides of the battle might suffer losses. At that time, Murong Yu could benefit from it. I'd better kill Jiao Li first. Murong Yu slowly hid in the void and slowly flew towards the battle. Jiao Li's strength was not good. He was the weakest among the people present. Therefore, he didn't participate in the battle. Instead, he watched from afar as Yu Xian and the others fought in front of him. This gave Murong Yu a chance to kill him. However, the people fighting in front of him were all experts in the Immortal Emperor realm. They constantly exploded with power, shattering the void and making Murong Yu unable to get close. Once he got too close, Murong Yu would be shaken out of the void by these powers. At that time, he might not be able to kill Jiao Li. Murong Yu slowly approached Jiao Li and finally stopped when he was a distance away from Jiao Li. If he continued to approach, his body would be shaken out of the void. At this moment, Jiao Li was still focused on the battle in front of him, completely unaware that he had been targeted by the Grim Reaper. This is the time. Suddenly, Murong Yu roared in his heart. At the same time, he activated the troop formula and turned into a ball of flowing light, rushing toward Jiao Li. During this process, Murong Yu stretched out his hand. His 5 fingers formed a claw and grabbed at Jiao Li's head. At the same time that Murong Yu made his move, Jiao Li's heart suddenly felt an intense aura of death. Therefore, Jiao Li instantly became alert and shouted, "Who is it?" At the same time, Jiao Li suddenly soared into the air and punched out. Crack! Murong Yu's attack, which had been accumulating power for a long time, directly clawed at Jiao Li's fist. A terrifying power burst out and directly shattered Jiao Li's hands. At the same time, Murong Yu's claw did not stop and pierced into Jiao Li's shoulder. Suddenly, blood splattered out, accompanied by Jiao Li's scream. "It's you!" At this moment, Jiao Li finally saw Murong Yu and could not help but roar in anger. At the same time, power burst out from his body. The surface of his body wriggled quickly, and an armor was quickly revealed. Murong Yu snorted coldly and punched out with his other hand, violently bombarding Jiao Li's body. Bang! A terrifying power burst out. Jiao Li let out a shrill scream and spat out blood. Even with the protection of a monarch weapon, he could not block Murong Yu's attack. After all, Murong Yu's strength could kill an immortal emperor. Although Jiao Li was strong, he only had the strength of an early-stage immortal monarch. The difference between an early-stage immortal monarch and an early-stage immortal emperor was insignificant. If the monarch weapon had not blocked Murong Yu's attack, Jiao Li would have been killed. When Jiao Li spat out blood from the punch, Murong Yu's 5 fingers burst out and quickly entered Jiao Li's body. Suddenly, under the suppression of his powerful strength, Jiao Li's strength was immediately sealed. Swoosh! After sealing Jiao Li's strength, Murong Yu's body swayed and turned into a ray of light, shooting into the distance. Bastard, you're courting death. Just as Murong Yu's body shot out, Jiao Li's master, who was in the late-stage Immortal Emperor realm, finally came to his senses. He roared angrily and slapped out a palm that covered the sky and the sun. It was so powerful that it could destroy heaven and earth. It came crashing down on Murong Yu from all directions. It was not that their reaction was too slow, but it all happened too quickly. From Murong Yu's attack to sealing Jiao Li's strength, it all happened in an instant. Moreover, no one present had expected that someone would launch a sneak attack. One should know that after entering the divine tomb, they had not even seen a shadow, let alone a person, especially when Jiao Li's master and the others were fighting fiercely with the young master of the Immortal Palace. Seeing Jiao Li's master's incomparably terrifying strength, Murong Yu wanted to test how terrifying his master's strength was. Therefore, he let out a long roar and launched a 1,000-army elephant-drawing fist, soaring into the sky. Asterisk Kong Long. Asterisk the strength of both sides collided fiercely in the void. The terrifying strength exploded, instantly crushing Murong Yu's strength. Jiao Li's master's big hand also paused for a moment, and some of his strength also dissipated. However, he still continued to attack with incomparable speed. What a powerful strength! Murong-yu let out a long roar and threw out tens of thousands of punches in an instant. Asterisk Hong Long Long. Asterisk Murong-yu's strength was very strong, but there was still a huge gap between him and a late immortal venerable. After throwing out a few punches, the big hand slapped down fiercely. Asterisk Crackle. Asterisk the terrifying strength hit Murong-yu's body like stormy waves. Suddenly, the feather armor enveloped Murong-yu's entire body, making him look like a divine armor warrior. At this moment, Jiao Li's master saw his strength, which was enough to kill an intermediate immortal emperor expert, fiercely bombarding Murong-yu's body. Bursts of golden light radiated from Murong-yu's body. At the same time, Murong-yu twisted his body like a swimming fish and directly rushed forward. He turned into a streak of flowing light and disappeared into the distant horizon with a whoosh. How is this possible? Jiao Li's master couldn't help but be shocked when he saw that his strength couldn't do anything to Murong-yu. Even an intermediate immortal emperor expert wouldn't be able to withstand his attack just now. However, Murong-yu didn't seem to be injured at all. Asterisk whoosh. Asterisk with a flash. Jiao Li's master chased after Murong-yu. However, at this moment, the people from the Immortal Palace attacked again. Your strength is actually so frightening. Jiao Li looked at Murong-yu with a horrified expression, his face filled with disbelief. Just now, he saw his master's strength bombarding Murong-yu's body. However, he was shocked to see that when the strength bombarded Murong-yu's body, the divine armor on Murong-yu's body flashed with golden light. Then, Jiao Li was shocked to see that the strength of his master's attack on Murong-yu's body was transferred away. It couldn't hurt Murong-yu at all. Even if there was a small part of the strength that hadn't been transferred away, it couldn't cause any harm to Murong-yu. With a thought, Murong-yu hid the feather armor in his body again. Then, he looked at the shocked Jiao Li and snorted coldly. "Boy, who the hell are you? Let me go, or my master will definitely kill you in the morning and wipe out your entire family." Jiao Li reacted and shouted at Murong-yu. "Wipe out my entire family?" Murong-yu sneered. "You probably still think your master can kill me." Jiao Li was silent. Murong-yu's speed was really too fast. Coupled with the strange and unpredictable feather armor on his body, it seemed that it would be a little difficult for his master to kill him. "I admit that you are very strong, and it won't be easy for my master to kill you. However, once my master refines that divine weapon, you will definitely die. Let me go, kneel down, kowtow, and become my slave, and I can spare your life. Otherwise, you will be dead. Your entire family will be wiped out because of your stupidity." As if thinking of something, Jiao Li suddenly shouted. He had completely forgotten that he was now a prisoner. "Divine weapon?" Murong-yu's face flashed with a touch of surprise. Then he asked, "What divine weapon?" Seeing Murong-yu's appearance, Jiao Li thought that Murong-yu was afraid. He immediately said arrogantly, "How can a lowly person like you know about the divine weapon? You're not qualified to know." Before Jiao Li could finish his words, Murong-yu directly slapped him in the face, breaking all his teeth. "You despicable bastard! How dare you hit me? You're dead. I'll slaughter your entire clan. No, I'll slaughter all 10 of them." Jiao Li roared as he glared at Murong-yu with incomparable hatred. "I don't know if my entire family will be wiped out, but you are dead. Do you believe that I will kill you immediately?" Murong-yu's anger rose. He felt that Jiao Li was really an idiot. If it wasn't for him wanting to know about the divine weapon and worrying about his master catching up, Murong-yu would have already slapped this bastard to death. Feeling Murong-yu's chilling, killing intent, Jiao Li finally reacted. He was now just a prisoner, a fish on the chopping board. He couldn't resist at all. "I have no enmity with you. If you let me go, I will never find trouble with you in the future. I will even give you great benefits. I swear." Jiao Li was really frightened because he felt Murong-yu's chilling, killing intent. "It's not impossible to not kill you, as long as you give me the origin of the Daluo cultivation world." Morong said indifferently. What? You want the origin of the world? No, that's impossible. Jiao roared. As enforcer, he knew the benefits of being enforcer. If he handed over the origin of the cultivation world, he would be worthless from now on. Chapter 695. Before Jiao Li became enforcer of the Daluo cultivation world, his talent and aptitude were also very strong. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to be recognized by the origin of the Daluo cultivation world and become enforcer. However, compared to his talent before becoming enforcer and his current talent, it was really one of heaven and one of earth. One of the greatest benefits of the origin power was to improve a person's aptitude and talent. As long as they were enforcer, their talent would be constantly improved by the origin power. Of course, it was impossible for this to be endless. Everyone's talent had a limit. Once this limit was reached, no matter how strong the origin power was, it could not continue to improve. However, where was the so-called limit? No one knew, because many enforcers, even after reaching the immortal venerable realm, their talent would still improve before their lifespan was exhausted. Of course, this was only a minority. Generally, those who could become enforcers could become gods in the end. If they couldn't become gods after their talent improved so much, then they were really trash. Jiao Li naturally knew the benefits of the origin power, so after hearing Murong's words, he roared. After receiving the benefits of the origin power, it was impossible to give up the origin power again. Even if it's impossible, it has to be possible. Will you take the initiative to hand over the origin power, or will I take it away? After a round of extremely fast flight, Morong had already flown out of the grassland and entered the mountains. Jiao Li's master should have been entangled by the young master of the immortal palace and couldn't catch up. Moreover, even if there was no entanglement, with Morong's speed, it was impossible for them to catch up. Even if I die, I won't give you the origin power. At worst, we'll break up. Jiao Li ferociously roared at Morong. Is that so? A cold light flashed in Morong's eyes. In that case, I'll have to do it myself. As he spoke, Morong stretched out his big hand and was about to grab Jiao Li's dantian. The origin power of the Daluo cultivation world hovered in Jiao Li's dantian. Morong naturally had the ability to grab it and then refine it. Hold on. Seeing that Morong really wanted to extract his origin strength, Jiao Li immediately became afraid. He knew that Morong really wanted to do this. Even if I give you the power of the origin, you won't be able to become a punisher of the exalted immortal world. How about this? If you let me go, I'll be loyal to you in the future. Moreover, my master is very powerful. He is a late-stage immortal emperor expert. Late immortal venerable? Powerful? Can he kill me? Don't forget that I'm only at the immortal king realm. Cut the crap and obediently hand over the source energy. Otherwise, I'll kill you, Morong said disdainfully. Bastard, you cursed that you would never become a god, that you would never be able to sense the god realm, and that you would run out of lifespan and die. Even if I die, I won't let you get my origin energy. Jiao Li roared furiously. At the same time, waves of violent energy constantly emitted from his body. Moreover, his body rapidly expanded. He was actually going to self-destruct. According to Jiao Li's understanding, once he self-destructed, the Daluo cultivation world's origin energy would shatter the void and return to the Daluo cultivation world. Morong would never be able to get it. Self-destruct? In front of me, you won't be able to die even if you want to. Morong sneered disdainfully and slapped Jiao Li's dantian. Puff! Jiao Li's dantian immediately shattered. Jiao Li's swollen body deflated like a deflated balloon. You cripple my cultivation. You cripple my strength. You would die a horrible death. My master will definitely kill you to avenge me. Jiao Li screamed miserably. It turned out that Morong had already crippled his cultivation. If your master dares to kill me, I can guarantee that he will be the one to die in the end. Morong sneered. His hand directly reached into Jiao Li's dantian and grabbed at the Daluo cultivation world's origin energy. However, how could the Daluo cultivation world's origin energy be willing to be caught by Murongyu? Seeing Murongyu's hand coming, the Daluo cultivation world's origin energy turned into a ray of light and fled into the distance. However, how could Murongyu let it escape? Before he made his move, he had already set up a restriction nearby. This was a restriction set up with the power of space. Even though the Daluo cultivation world's origin energy was extremely powerful, it could not break through. After all, the Daluo cultivation world's origin energy was only an incomplete cultivation world. It was impossible for it to escape Murongyu's control. Murongyu grabbed at the air, and a powerful suction force acted on the Daluo cultivation world's origin energy. Then, it was sucked into Murongyu's hand. Bastard, you will die a horrible death. With his cultivation crippled and the Daluo cultivation world's origin energy deprived, Jiao Li was in despair. All he could do was roar and curse at Murongyu. However, Murongyu remained indifferent. You piece of trash. Die. Murongyu sneered in his heart. Just as he was about to kill Jiao Li, he suddenly thought of the divine artifact that Jiao Li's master and the young master of the Immortal Palace were fighting for. I wonder what kind of divine artifact it is. Murongyu pondered and was about to read Jiao Li's memory. However, at this moment, Murongyu suddenly felt an extremely strong sense of danger. Immediately, he retreated without hesitation. At the same time, during this process, he instantly raised his strength to the limit. At the same time, the pseudo-divine artifact feather armor was draped over his body. Hichu Luoshu was immediately summoned by him. It floated in the void above his head and dropped down a yellow divine light, firmly protecting Murongyu inside. At the same time, Murongyu roared and unleashed his most powerful defensive move, 10 Directions Invincible. Rumble, an extremely powerful force, even more terrifying than the immortal Venerable Realm, hit Murongyu like a stormy sea. Suddenly, the pseudo-divine artifact feather armor on Murongyu's body flashed with a dazzling golden light. A powerful and destructive force rushed into Murongyu's body. Wherever it passed, whether it was his meridians, flesh, or bones, they were quickly torn apart and twisted into powder. Murongyu roared as an endless amount of energy erupted from his body and clashed with the incoming energy. At the same time, the life force became violent and surged out madly, protecting Murongyu's body and quickly repairing his torn meridians. Rumble, the divine light, dropped down by Hichu Luoshu actually shattered, as if it had been shattered by a powerful force. Immediately, Murongyu's body was sent flying far away like a kite with a broken string. Kacha kacha! The sound of bones breaking constantly rang out from his body. At the same time, Murongyu could not help but vomit blood. He fell to the ground in the distance, creating a huge crater. At that moment, a soft cry of surprise sounded in Murongyu's ears. At the same time, a force wrapped around Jiao Li, who was cursing loudly. In the blink of an eye, Jiao Li disappeared before Murongyu's eyes. At the same time, when Jiao Li disappeared, the strong sense of danger in Murongyu's heart also dissipated. It came and went quickly, as if nothing had happened. But did it really not happen? Murongyu looked at his battered and exhausted self and could not help but smile bitterly. The strength of the person who attacked was too strong. At least, he was much stronger than Yenyu, who was in the immortal Venerable Realm. After all, he had the ability to escape from Yenyu that day. Moreover, his strength today was many times stronger than before. Murongyu even felt that if Yenyu attacked now, he might not be able to injure him in one move, let alone make him stay. And the strength of the person who attacked just now was definitely much stronger than Yenyu. It was simply terrifying. Murongyu even felt that the person who attacked did not want to take his life, but only wanted to save Jiao Li. In other words, the other party could have almost killed Murongyu with just a light flick. Murongyu was only grazed by the power of that terrifying existence, and was almost killed. At the thought of this, Yu could not help but feel horrified. Cold sweat flowed. One must know that he immediately took out the Hichu Luo Shu, the pseudo-divine artifact feather armor, and even raised his strength to the limit to unleash the ultimate defensive move, Invincible 10 Directions. Even so, his body was almost destroyed. One could imagine how terrifying the strength of the person who attacked was. Who is this person? Why did he want to save Jiaoli? Yu became gloomy. Intuitively, he did not think that the person just now was Jiaoli's master. If Jiaoli's master was so powerful, Jiaoli would not have been captured by him. Could it be the previous enforcer of the great Luo cultivation world? No, if it was those enforcers, they would not just let Jiaoli go. I seized the origin power of the great Luo cultivation world, so they would definitely not let me go. Then who is it? Yu's face darkened, and his heart sank. With such a backer, Jiaoli would definitely seek revenge in the future. Jiaoli is just a piece of trash. As long as this person doesn't do anything. So what if he does? One day, I will ruthlessly trample him under my feet. Yu's heart hardened, and he immediately sat down cross-legged and began to repair his body. Not bad. Although my injuries look serious, they're all superficial wounds. With the cleansing of my life force, I should be able to recover very quickly. Yu sighed in relief after taking a look at his injuries and immediately began to treat them. If it took over 1,000 years to recover from the injuries Yu had inflicted, it would be serious. After all, Yu is unable to enter the Hichu Luo Shu world now. If he wanted to recover, he would have to leave this space. But where would he leave? He had no idea at all. Chapter 696. Asterisk, rumble. Asterisk, Yu sat cross-legged on the ground, his entire body shrouded in a dense green light. It was almost impossible to see Yu in the light. In addition, a powerful aura was constantly emitted from his body. His chi and blood were rising and surging. In fact, a thunderous sound could be heard from his body. This was Yu healing his injuries. Yu's entire body was almost blown to pieces when he was brushed by that terrifying force. But fortunately, these were all superficial wounds. Under the frenzied cleansing of life force, Yu's injuries were quickly healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Life force was indeed powerful, and as Yu's strength continued to grow, so did his life force. Take Yu's current injuries as an example. If his life force hadn't advanced yet, it would have been like the life force of a perfected golden immortal. His injuries could have been healed, but it would have definitely taken a long time. For example, the injuries that Yu could heal in less than half a day would have taken tens of thousands of years at that time. This was the benefit of advancing life force. Half a day later, the thunderous sounds coming from Yu's body gradually decreased. At the same time, the green light overflowing from Yu's body also gradually disappeared. Yu suddenly opened his eyes as a cold glint flashed across them. His injuries had all been healed. Origin of the perfected, golden, immortal world. Come out. Yu roared in his heart and grabbed at the air, pulling out the origin of the perfected, golden, immortal world from his body. Even though he was attacked just now, Yu still firmly sealed the origin of the perfected, golden, immortal world. Otherwise, the origin of the perfected, golden, immortal world would have flown away long ago. Once it flew away, you wouldn't be able to become the enforcer of the perfected, golden, immortal world. Of course, if he could kill the next enforcer of the perfected, golden, immortal world, it was still possible. But who knew who the next enforcer would be? Where would it be? Perhaps the enforcers of the great Luo world of cultivators had never appeared? At this moment, the source of the great Luo world of cultivators was floating in Yu's palm. It was different from its initial frenzied struggle. At this moment, the origin of the great Luo world of cultivation was very quiet. Have you considered the origin source of the Zenith Heaven world of cultivation? Yu did not refine it. Instead, he asked faintly, Previously, when Murong Yu was recuperating, he had sealed the origin of the Daluo world into his Dantian, allowing them to communicate with the origins of the Huaxiao world of self-cultivators, Fenghuo world of self-cultivators, and Jiushuan world of self-cultivators. Of course, the so-called exchange was just a way for Murong Yu to display his strength. He believed that after seeing the three origins of the Huaxiao world of cultivation, the origin of the Zenith Heaven world of cultivation had changed its mind. In fact, Murong Yu had sealed the Daluo world of cultivation in his Dantian, so that the three origins of the Huaxiao world of cultivation would persuade them to surrender. Now that the origin of the great Luo world of cultivation was in Murong Yu's hands, Murong Yu knew that this matter was about to succeed. You can actually control multiple worlds at the same time and become the enforcer of multiple cultivation worlds at the same time. This is truly unheard of. The origin of the great Luo world of cultivation didn't answer Murong Yu's question and only sighed. In fact, Murong Yu is definitely the first in history to be able to become the enforcer of multiple cultivation worlds at the same time. It could even be said that he was the last and only one. Murong Yu was also somewhat surprised by this. Sometimes, he didn't know why he could control so many cultivation worlds. If it was an ordinary person, even if the origins of the cultivation worlds acknowledged them, they wouldn't be able to become the origins of multiple cultivation worlds. Being the enforcer of one world was already the limit. If there was another world, they would explode. Or rather, they couldn't control multiple cultivation worlds at all. Perhaps this was the ability of the chaotic celestial body? Murong Yu frowned and said mildly, "Not only that, I will control all 36 cultivation worlds of the Yanhuang immortal realm in the future, and even all the cultivation worlds in this universe, 108,000 of them. Origin of the great Luo world of cultivation. Will you submit? If you don't, I will have to refine you by force." You should understand the difference between being forcibly refined and voluntarily submitting and the treatment, Murong Yu said mildly. "I submit," the origin of the great Luo world of cultivation hurriedly said. After seeing the three origins of the Huaxia cultivation world, he had changed his mind. Besides, so what if he didn't submit? With Murong Yu's current ability, it was enough to forcibly refine him. Rather than being forcibly refined, it was better to submit voluntarily. That way, he could gain even greater benefits. However, to fully control the great Luo world of cultivation, you have to return. Do you want to return now? The origin of the great Luo world of cultivation continued. Not for now. This space is very strange. Let's explore it first. Besides, we might not be able to return. Murong Yu pondered and said. The He Tu and the Book of the Luo couldn't be teleported anymore. Although Murong Yu was now able to contact the origins of the various cultivation worlds, communicate with them, and directly teleport back to the cultivation world, Murong Yu was unable to do so. But Murong Yu knew that this would consume a large amount of origin power. This wasn't good for him or the origin of the cultivation world of cultivation. After all, there was only so much origin power. Once it was consumed, it would take a long time to recover. The power of origin was the foundation to make these origins stronger. If that's the case, then I will refine you first. Once we get it, we'll leave the divine tomb and head to the Daluo cultivation world to take complete control of it. As Murong Yu spoke, he slapped the Daluo cultivation world's source energy into his Dantian and began refining it. The origin of the great Luo world of cultivation was quite cooperative. Coupled with Murong Yu's familiarity, it didn't take long for Murong Yu to completely refine the origin of the great Luo world of cultivation. As long as he left the divine tomb, he could return to the great Luo world of cultivation and completely control it. Rumble. Right after Murong Yu refined the origin source of the divine Great Net cultivation world, rumbling thunder resounded within his body once again. It was as if heavenly thunder had exploded. At this moment, Murong Yu even saw his talent and aptitude increase by a little. What surprised Murong Yu the most was that his strength had been raised to the peak of the late-stage Immortal King realm. He was only one step away from entering the Immortal Lord realm. The first level of the third level of the chaotic celestial body record was also completed. Yu even smelled a hint of an opportunity to break through. Once he broke through, Yu's strength would skyrocket. He would at least reach the early stage Immortal Lord realm. He might even reach the late stage Immortal Lord realm like before. At that time, Yu could even be said to be invincible below the Immortal Lord realm. He would be invincible in the world and sweep across all directions. Not bad. Although my realm didn't increase, my dragon power is more condensed and my strength is stronger than before. Now, I can even kill a mid-stage Immortal Lord. I can even fight a late-stage Immortal Lord. Yu stood up and waved his arm. After feeling his powerful strength, he couldn't help but smile. Whoosh! Then, Yu turned into a stream of light and soared into the sky, disappearing into the distant horizon. There really is a divine artifact. Is this really the space in the divine tomb? Who was that expert from before? Yu pondered and shot in a direction. At this moment, Yu's speed was a little faster than before he refined the origin of the Daluo world of cultivation. When the illusory light wings spread out, it was simply unparalleled in the world. Soon, he went deep into the forest. There were many demonic beasts in the forest. Along the way, Yu encountered countless demonic beasts. There were lions, tigers, wolves, and other demonic beasts of various races. These demonic beasts were all demonic beasts without intelligence. They were not demonic beasts. They were very barbaric. As soon as they saw Yu, they launched their fiercest attacks. Moreover, what shocked Yu was that these demonic beasts were very powerful. The Immortal King realm was the weakest. The strongest had reached the peak of the late-stage Immortal Lord realm. Yu guessed that the late-stage Immortal Lord realm might not be the ultimate strength of these demonic beasts. In this forest, there must be demonic beasts of the Immortal Lord realm. Therefore, Yu became more and more careful. After killing a demonic beast of the mid-stage Immortal Lord realm, Yu quickly left the place. There was no choice. There were too many demonic beasts, and they were too powerful. After Yu killed one, he attracted a large group of demonic beasts. Yu was in a sorry state. If it wasn't for Yu's unparalleled speed, even a late-stage Immortal Lord realm expert would have died here. Now, Yu was being chased by a group of demonic beasts. Buzz Yu turned into a streak of light and streaked across the horizon, flying into the distance. Behind him, there was a group of demonic beasts that blotted out the sky. They were buzzing as they chased after him. These demonic beasts were mosquitoes that were as large as cows. They weren't very strong. Most of them were at the Immortal Lord realm. The strongest among them was at the Immortal Lord realm. However, when they gathered together, they emitted a ferocious aura. Everywhere they passed, the demonic beasts fled for their lives. These terrifying mosquitoes weren't strong individually. However, when they gathered together, even a late-stage Immortal Lord realm expert could only flee. During this process, Yu even saw the flesh and blood of a late-stage Immortal Emperor Netherwolf being sucked dry by these mosquitoes. In just an instant, all that was left of the wolf was a skeleton. Even its soul had been sucked away. It was extremely terrifying. Yu accidentally flew past and killed a blood-sucking mosquito. As a result, he was chased by a large group of soul-sucking mosquitoes. Although Yu was confident in his strength, he didn't want to fight with them after seeing how terrifying soul-sucking mosquitoes were. Instead, he fled. However, a smile soon appeared on Yu's face. This was because he saw some familiar faces. Chapter 697. Ling Chun was the first batch of people to enter the Divine Tomb. After entering the Divine Tomb, he had the same problem as Yu. He realized that this place was incomparably vast. However, he was lucky that he had gathered some experts from the sacred sect in these few days. At this moment, he was flying to one side with the experts from the sacred sect. Each of them was in a sorry state and emitted a tragic aura. Obviously, they had gone through a battle earlier. Just now, they had encountered a powerful demonic beast at the peak of the late immortal emperor realm. The demonic beast was too terrifying. Ling Chun and the rest had used all their strength and sacrificed several immortal emperors before they killed it. When they met Murong Yu in Mo, didn't the young masters of the sacred sect and immortal palace display strength that exceeded the immortal emperor realm? They could even fight head-on with an immortal venerable realm expert. In fact, Ling Chun and Yu Xian did have the strength to fight against an early immortal venerable realm expert. However, they weren't in the immortal world. In the divine tomb, they couldn't unleash their strongest strength. This was because they were suppressed by the power of the divine tomb. In the divine tomb, everyone was suppressed by the tomb. It was just a matter of how much was suppressed. Moreover, the divine tomb was flowing with faint divine origin energy and not immortal origin energy. Even immortal venerables couldn't absorb divine origin energy and didn't dare to absorb it, let alone immortal emperors like them. Therefore, in the divine tomb, they couldn't absorb heaven and earth spiritual energy to recover their strength. If they wanted to recover their strength, they could only absorb immortal spiritual pills or immortal spiritual veins. In this way, their combat strength had decreased imperceptibly. Young master of the sacred sect, we meet again. Just as Ling Chun was flying with the group, a voice with a smile was heard. Then, with a swoosh, a figure appeared in front of them. So fast, Ling Chun squinted his eyes and looked at Murong Yu. Then his eyes burst out with a dazzling light. "It's you?" Ling Chun's eyes shot out two terrifying rays of light that pierced towards Murong Yu. This was because he saw that Murong Yu was only in the Immortal King realm, but his speed was faster than him. Boom! As she spoke, Ling Chun made her move. He stretched out his hand and grabbed at Murong Yu's head, intending to capture Murong Yu. "You're truly rude. Originally, I had something to tell you, but now let's forget about it." When Ling Chun made his move, Murong Yu's figure flashed and disappeared from where he stood. Crack! Ling Chun grabbed at the void, but she only managed to grab at thin air. Instead, she tore a large part of the void apart. However, Murong Yu had already appeared in the distance. Murong Yu already knew that Ling Chun would make a move, so how could he not be prepared? In fact, he had already left before Ling Chun made her move. With Murong Yu's speed, even Ling Chun would not be able to catch up to him when she was at her peak. Ling Chun was taken aback, and killing intent surged in her heart. Just as she was about to chase after him, she suddenly stopped. At this moment, a ferocious aura suddenly flew over from their side. Ling Chun turned around, and her expression changed drastically. "Soul-sucking mosquitoes, damn it! Let's go!" As she spoke, Ling Chun was the first to use her speed and fly forward. As for the others, their reactions were slower by half a beat, but they still quickly flew away. They did not want to fight with these soul-sucking mosquitoes. One or two of them were fine. However, the swarm of soul-sucking mosquitoes was like a flood. There were thousands of them, and Ling Chun and the others did not dare to stay here. The scariest thing about the soul-sucking mosquitoes was not their ability to suck blood and flesh, nor was it their powerful strength. Instead, it was their ability to suck souls. Once bitten by the soul-sucking mosquitoes, even their souls would be washed away. Ling Chun's reaction was fast, and his subordinates were not slow either. However, the soul-sucking mosquitoes were not slow either. When Ling Chun escaped, the soul-sucking mosquitoes had already swarmed over. Instantly, an unlucky immortal monarch could not escape in time and was swarmed by the soul-sucking mosquitoes. After a blood-curdling scream, a set of bones fell from the sky. This person was already dead. In just an instant, his flesh and soul were completely devoured by the soul-sucking mosquitoes. After this immortal monarch was cleansed, another 3 people in the Saint Gate were killed by the soul-sucking mosquitoes. Among them, the weakest was an early-stage immortal emperor, and there was even an intermediate-stage immortal emperor. Even an intermediate-stage immortal emperor did not have the ability to fight back in front of thousands of soul-sucking mosquitoes. They were directly devoured. Ha ha! Murong-Yu's arrogant and egotistical voice came from afar, but he had already disappeared from where he stood. B** starred. The St. Gates' young master Ling Chen's face was ashen, and he was furious. Don't let me know who you are. Otherwise, I'll exterminate your 9 generations. Kill everyone in your sect, from top to bottom, and not leave a single chicken or dog alive. Ling Chen gritted his teeth, but he did not dare to stay. He fled into the distance like a dog that had lost its home. At this moment, there were only 2 immortal emperors by his side. At least 10 people were killed by the soul-sucking mosquitoes. The loss was so great that it made his heart ache, and he kept cursing Murong-Yu. It's a pity that I couldn't kill this Ling Chen. Murong-Yu shook his head in disappointment. He had thought that he could use this opportunity to kill this St. Gates young master. However, this guy was too smart. He did not come into contact with the soul-sucking mosquitoes at all and escaped directly. In addition to his speed, those soul-sucking mosquitoes could not catch up. However, it's not bad to kill a few immortal emperors of the St. Gate. After saying that, Murong-Yu flew up again and left this place. After a few days, Murong-Yu crossed many places. Grasslands, forests, deserts, swamps. There are almost all kinds of terrains. During this process, Murong-Yu met more and more people. It was obvious that this world was not infinitely big. Based on the information obtained from other people, this space was about the size of 100 great states in the immortal world. 100 immortal emperor states was almost 10 million times bigger than the Huaxia cultivation world. One could imagine how big this space was. During this process, Murong-Yu witnessed many fights for divine weapons. In fact, Murong-Yu had once relied on his unparalleled speed to snatch a divine artifact. In fact, these were not divine weapons. They were just pseudo-divine weapons. That said, even if they were pseudo-divine artifacts, they would still be much more powerful than imperial armaments. At this time, in the tomb of the god of sin, there were not only disciples of the 4 giants or people of their affiliated forces. More and more people entered this place. It was obvious that even if the 4 major forces joined forces, they could not stop the entire immortal world. Now, the entire tomb of the god of sin was fully open. Countless people poured into the tomb of the god of sin to search for the so-called divine weapons and divine pills. However, more people were buried in this tomb of the god of sin. It was only today that Murong-Yu discovered that those terrifying, soul-sucking mosquitoes were nothing to him. Not to mention those grasshopper-like beasts he encountered. There were a lot of immortal, venerable beasts. As he walked on the road, an immortal Emperor Realm beast would pounce on him. There were even a few times when Murong-Yu almost became food in the stomach of some immortal, venerable beasts. If not for his unparalleled speed, he would have been dead long ago. Even he had almost been killed, let alone the others. There were no divine artifacts, nor were there any divine pills. There was not even a way out. The only thing there were immortals who were constantly being killed. Immortal kings and immortal monarchs would definitely not live for more than a few days once they entered the tomb of the god of sin, unless they were in a big team and grouped together. However, intense battles also broke out between people. Why do I feel that there's a strong aura of conspiracy here? Murong-Yu stood on a mountain peak and frowned slightly. After entering the tomb of the god of sin, there was no way out. However, the people outside thought that there were divine weapons and divine pills in the tomb of the god of sin, so they kept pouring into the tomb of the god of sin. Now, there were at least a few trillion immortals who had entered. At least 80% of the people who entered this place were killed by those demonic beasts or other people. Murong-Yu even smelled a faint smell of blood in the air. It feels like we're just some objects that came here to fill the stomachs of these demonic beasts. Murong-Yu knitted his brows as he looked at the group of people fighting a demonic beast not far away. This was a beast that looked like a mantis. Its whole body was golden, and it emitted an extremely fierce aura. Its strength had reached the early stage of the immortal emperor realm. Chi! Suddenly, an immortal emperor let out a scream and was split into 2 by this mantis. Then, this mantis swallowed this person alive without hesitation. Roar. After swallowing the immortal emperor, the body of the mantis suddenly burst out with an intense golden light. At the same time, an even stronger aura appeared. Mid-stage immortal emperor realm? He actually advanced? Murong Yu's face was filled with astonishment. That group of people was barely on par with the mantis. Now that the mantis had advanced, its strength instantly increased by more than 10 times. Bang! 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 The praying mantis unleashed its might in an instant and killed more than 10 experts in an instant. Then, the mantis swallowed these people into its stomach without hesitation. Roar! The mantis let out a loud roar and then turned to look at Murong Yu. What a beast! Its strength has increased again. After seeing the mantis swallow those experts, Murong Yu saw that its strength had surpassed the intermediate stage of the Immortal Emperor realm and was slowly approaching the advanced stage of the Immortal Emperor realm. Swallowing immortals to advance, could it be? Murong Yu's face changed suddenly. Chapter 698. Murong Yu instantly thought of a possibility. If these beasts could all level up after devouring a certain number of immortals, then if it was individual, it would be the way these beasts themselves leveled up. However, if every beast was like this, then it wouldn't be their cultivation method or individual situation. This situation could only be a conspiracy, a divine tomb that fell from the sky, a divine tomb that countless immortals entered, and a divine tomb that allowed beasts to level up by devouring immortals. How terrifying was this? Perhaps this is really a big conspiracy that attracted countless immortals to level up and increase the strength of the beasts. This terrifying thought gradually appeared in Murong Yu's mind. How many people had entered the divine tomb now? At least a few trillion people. A trillion was a trillion. Moreover, this number was only the initial number. Murong Yu believed that as time passed, more people would enter the divine tomb. These people who had entered the divine tomb were at least Immortal King realm experts. Every one of their blood essence contained terrifying power. And if these beasts devoured a large number of them, how many immortal venerables would appear? It was even possible that there would be experts who surpassed the immortal venerables. At that time, when these powerful beasts left the divine tomb, the entire immortal world would probably be destroyed by them. And this wasn't the most terrifying thing. With the intelligence of these beasts, it was impossible for them to devise such a conspiracy. In other words, someone had devised this conspiracy, and this person was most likely the owner of the divine tomb. If that happened, it would be terrifying. If this could control the beasts in the divine tomb, they could definitely control the entire immortal world and be invincible. It was too terrifying. Thinking of this, Murong Yu couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. Roar! At this moment, the intermediate immortal emperor realm praying mantis let out a furious roar and pounced towards Murong Yu. It wanted to kill Murong Yu and devour him. You're courting death. Murong Yu coldly snorted and took a step forward. Thousand Army Elephant Fist. Dark Devil Prajna. Heart-ripping Lung Dragon Claw Kick. The strength of 10,000 Gene. Elephant Step. Murong Yu stepped on the army character formula and directly rushed up. In an instant, he erupted with the Dragon Elephant Prajna art. He struck out 7 moves in a row, bombarding the Mantis demonic beast and causing it to vomit blood. Although Mantis had broken through to the intermediate immortal emperor realm, how could he be compared to Murong Yu? Since he had just broken through, his strength had yet to be consolidated. The most important thing was that this mantis did not have much intelligence. In the battle, it only knew how to bite, claw, and pounce. It was not a match for Murong Yu at all. Heavy Dragon Lock. Murong Yu spread, opened his fingers, and turned them into a dragon claw. He pierced through the void and emitted a terrifying aura. He grabbed a gap and stabbed into the head of the mantis. Then, he exerted force in his 5 fingers, and with a crack, the head of this mantis was ruthlessly crushed. Its soul was shattered, and it was instantly killed. The heavy dragon lock was a claw technique from the Black Tortoise scripture. The might of the armored bone dragon claw was not inferior to the dragon-elephant Prajnaart. It was one of Murong Yu's main battle techniques. After killing the mantis with one claw, Murong Yu snorted coldly. He spat out a flame and burned the mantis. He did not want other demonic beasts to eat the corpse of this mantis and increase their strength. I want to see if these demonic beasts are as I guessed. Murong Yu thought in his heart. Then he soared into the sky. Although he had a terrifying guess in his heart, Murong Yu was not willing to believe that his guess was correct. However, no matter what, he had to verify it. Rumble. Not long after, Murong Yu crossed the distance of 1,000,000 miles. At this time, he saw people fighting in front of him. However, when Murong Yu flew over, he found that the battle had already ended. When Murong Yu arrived nearby, he happened to see a nether wolf devouring a corpse on the ground. There were more than 10 corpses scattered on the ground. Although these people were dead, their bodies emitted a powerful aura. It was obvious that they were not weak. Seeing Murong Yu come over, the nether wolf that was devouring the corpses immediately roared at him. However, it did not pounce over. Instead, it leisurely devoured the corpses. Murong Yu did not stop it. He only looked at the nether wolf quietly. The nether wolf's strength was not very strong. Like the mantis, it was in the early stage of the immortal emperor realm. At this moment, Murong Yu clearly saw that after the nether wolf devoured the corpses, they turned into energy that entered the nether wolf's limbs, bones, meridians, and even dantian, demonic beasts had dantians as well. On the other hand, the nether wolf's strength was slowly increasing. When the nether wolf had devoured more than 10 corpses, boom! The nether wolf's body exploded. Following that, an even more powerful aura burst out from its body and soared into the sky. It really broke through. Murong Yu frowned slightly. This nether wolf had also broken through from the early stage of the immortal emperor realm to the intermediate stage of the immortal emperor realm. Its strength increased at a terrifying speed. Moreover, there was no bottleneck at all. It seemed that as long as it devoured enough experts, the netherwolf's realm would continue to increase. At that time, it would not be difficult for it to reach the immortal emperor realm. It might even surpass the immortal emperor realm. After making a breakthrough in strength, the netherwolf's glowing green eyes looked at Murong Yu. Then, it fiercely stomped on the ground and soared into the air, pouncing towards Murong Yu. In its eyes, Murong Yu was a ball of energy that could increase its strength. Die! Murong Yu shouted as he executed his ultimate battle skill, causing the heavens and earth to shatter and the sun and moon to dim. The frightening power even tore apart the surrounding space. In less than a dozen moves, the netherwolf was killed. However, after destroying the netherwolf, Murong Yu did not look happy. On the contrary, his face became even gloomier. Murong Yu soared into the sky again with a gloomy face. Following that, he encountered even more demonic beasts. A battle between demonic beasts and humans. A battle between demonic beasts. Whenever the beasts won, the beasts would devour the corpses. It was the same for both humans and beasts. After devouring the corpses, the beast's strength increased more or less. As expected, once more people enter the tomb of the god of sin, more and more powerful beasts will appear. Murong Yu's face was extremely gloomy. Moreover, Murong Yu noticed something else. When Murong Yu first entered the tomb of the god of sin, he did not encounter any humans or beasts. However, after such a long time, he encountered more and more beasts and humans. It could be said that Murong Yu would encounter immortals or beasts after walking a certain distance. Especially beasts, there were more and more of them. He didn't know where they came from. The most terrifying thing was that at the beginning, Murong Yu encountered immortal kings and immortal monarchs. But now, the beasts he encountered were all above the immortal emperor realm. Moreover, there would be more and more powerful beasts. The situation was grim. I have to stop all of this. Murong Yu's face was gloomy and his heart was heavy. If this matter was allowed to develop, Murong Yu did not know what would happen in the end. But how could he stop it? These people who entered the tomb of the god of sin would definitely not listen to him. I can only look for experts like the Heavenly Punisher Palace and the Immortal Palace. They should have gathered a lot of people. Murong Yu's idea was to gather all the people who entered the tomb of the god of sin and kill the beasts. At the very least, they would not let the beasts continue to wreak havoc and kill the immortals to increase their strength. In fact, if a large number of experts gathered, they might even be able to destroy the plot of the tomb of the god of sin. Or they could find a way to leave the tomb of the god of sin and go outside to stop the immortals from entering. However, the second method was not practical. Even if Murong Yu went out, no one would believe him. The space of the tomb of the god of sin should be the size of 100 provinces in the immortal world. It was not big, but it was not small either. At least, it was a little difficult for Murong Yu to find Yu Xian and the others. However, along the way, Murong Yu had seen many people gradually forming teams to fight against these beasts. Perhaps someone had already discovered the strangeness of these beasts. At the same time, Murong Yu kept spreading his ideas. In a mountain range in the tomb of the god of sin, the young masters of the Immortal Palace, the Sacred Sect, and the representatives of the Devil Sect and the Heavenly Punisher Palace gathered together. I believe everyone knows the seriousness of the matter, right? The so-called tomb of the god of sin and the so-called divine weapon are completely a conspiracy. Yu Xian, the young master of the Immortal Palace, said with a sneer. The others were also sneering. They were not fools. How could they not discover the situation? Now the strength of these beasts is getting stronger and stronger. After a while, I'm afraid all of them will advance to the terrifying immortal venerable realm. The most terrifying thing is that these beasts are endless. I don't know how many there are. The one who spoke was a young man. He was the representative of the Heavenly Punisher Palace. He was very powerful and was at the late stage of the immortal emperor realm like Yu Xian. It was believed that his true strength was stronger than the ordinary experts of the same realm. Although we don't know who is controlling this matter, we must not let them succeed. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable. A big shot of the Devil Sect said. Then what should we do? Although we have gathered some people, there is still a considerable number of people who have not gathered. Moreover, those ant-like forces still have doubts about our words and can't gather together. If we can't all gather together, we will only be slaughtered by the beasts. In the end, it will only increase the strength of the beasts. There's another problem. The people outside don't know that this is a conspiracy at all. A large number of people enter here at every moment. The most important thing is that the people who enter the tomb of the god of sin appear in a random place. If we can't unite, the beasts will become stronger and stronger. I'm afraid there will be experts who surpass the immortal venerable realm. Now we only have two ways. Find the exit and stop more people from entering. The other is to eliminate these beasts. The young master of the Immortal Palace said with a murderous look. Chapter 699. Immortal Palace's young master Yu Xian, Sacred Sect's young master Ling Chun, and the others were not good people. They did not want to save the world. The reason why they joined forces to exterminate these demonic beasts was because it was related to their own lives and their own interests. They all knew the seriousness of the matter, and that if they did not stop it, the demonic beasts in the tomb of the god of sin would become stronger and stronger. Not to mention the possibility of an existence surpassing the immortal venerable realm. Even if a large number of immortal venerable realm demonic beasts appeared, they would not be able to bear the consequences. Moreover, there might be someone behind these demonic beasts controlling everything. If this person developed, he would unify the immortal world when he left the tomb of the god of sin. In this way, the interests of the Immortal Palace, Sacred Sect, and other major forces would be damaged. Naturally, they did not want this to happen. Therefore, they had to stop all this. What if there are still people who are not willing to join us? Someone asked. Kill. Not only do we have to kill them, but we will also destroy their bodies, Sacred Sect's young master Ling Chun said murderously. The Immortal Palace's young master and the others nodded slightly. This was the only way now. Otherwise, the more deaths there were, the stronger the demonic beasts would be. Therefore, the experts of the four major forces joined forces and began to gather a large number of people. With their strength, many people joined their team one after another. Of course, not everyone was willing to join them. After all, some people did not see through this huge conspiracy at all and thought that it was just the four major forces who wanted to monopolize the treasures in the tomb of the god of sin. For these people, Yu Xian, Ling Chun, and the others did not say anything at all. There was only one word, kill. They were not good people to begin with. Now, for their own lives, they would become even more vicious. Anyone who did not join their team would die. No one would be left alive. Moreover, in the tomb of the god of sin, the four major forces were the most powerful. And as more and more people gathered together, they became stronger and stronger. These people have also discovered this huge conspiracy. I can't join them. When Murong came to this side, he found that Yu Xian and the others had already gathered a large number of people. They began to exterminate the demonic beasts. As for Murong, he had no intention of joining their team. It was not that Murong was stubborn and wanted to be a lone ranger. Instead, he knew that once he joined this team, he might not even know how he died. The young masters of the Immortal Palace and the Sacred Gate were not good people, and Murong had clashed with them before. With their personalities, even if they didn't want to kill Murong, they would use all kinds of tricks to kill him. For example, he could let Murong scout for information and kill him with the help of the demonic beasts. In the face of the threat to their lives, the people of the four major forces temporarily joined forces. No one wanted to fight for the position of Alliance Leader. Trying to snatch the title of Alliance Leader now was no different from courting death. It didn't take long for most of the immortals in the Divine Tomb to gather. Those who had just entered the Divine Tomb were gathered together. The counterattack had begun. The Alliance was divided into four teams. The Immortal Palace, the Holy Gate, the Devil's Sect, and the Heavenly Punisher Palace each led a team and began to exterminate the demonic beasts in different directions. Each team had more than 1 trillion people, which was 1 trillion people. The weakest was at the Immortal King realm. Together, their strength was terrifying. Even immortal venerables would flee at the sight of them. Although the demonic beasts in the Divine Tomb were powerful, they were no match for these people. Although immortals were constantly killed in this process, more immortals entered the Divine Tomb. From the beginning of the extermination of the demonic beasts, the immortals had the absolute upper hand. Wherever they passed, everything was destroyed and razed to the ground. Countless demonic beasts were killed and destroyed. It was as easy as blowing dry branches. Although the demonic beasts were powerful, they were not as powerful as the immortals. Even if there were immortal venerables, they would be killed by the joint forces of countless immortals. 100 states in the immortal world were not big, but they were not small either. In about a month's time, the human army had already swept through this space. Countless demonic beasts and immortals died, and the entire space was filled with a faint red gas. It was like fresh blood, emitting a faint smell of blood. The demonic beasts have almost been exterminated, but things seem to be getting more and more complicated. Murong didn't go with these people. Instead, he moved alone. He stood on top of a mountain peak and stared at the void in front of him, his expression growing darker and darker. Too many demonic beasts and immortals had died. The entire space was filled with the color of fresh blood and the faint smell of blood. At this moment, Murong discovered something that gave him a bad feeling. The blood and even the smell of blood floating in the air seemed to be slowly gathering in one direction. It was as if something up ahead was attracting the blood. Could it be that the demonic beast strength isn't part of the final plot? Could it be that the final plot is a blood sacrifice? A terrifying thought flashed through Murong's mind. With so many demonic beasts and demonic beasts dead, it would be best to use them as blood sacrifices. Even a god would likely be resurrected. A god is buried in the Divine Tomb. If this isn't an accident, but someone manipulated the appearance of the Divine Tomb to attract a large number of demonic beasts into the tomb for a blood sacrifice. The more Murong thought about it, the more apprehensive he became. The more he thought about it, the more likely it seemed. Immediately, he rose into the air and slowly flew in the direction of the blood floating in the air. Not long after, Muronyu arrived in the vicinity of a mountain peak. There were no demonic beasts in the thousands of miles around this mountain peak. Not a single one. Therefore, when the young master of the Immortal Palace and the others were clearing out the demonic beasts, they directly skipped this area. The blood is rushing toward the peak of this mountain. Unfortunately, my divine consciousness is suppressed so much that I can't see anything. Muronyu looked up at the towering mountain peak and frowned slightly. Let's go up and take a look. Muronyu's heart skipped a beat. He immediately sped up and flew toward the peak. Not long after Muronyu left. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Countless figures also shot over from afar. This is the peak. The exit should be on top. If there is a conspiracy, it should be on top. The one who spoke was the young master of the Immortal Palace, Yuxian. After clearing out the demonic beasts, they began to look for the exit out of the tomb of the god of sin. However, they almost searched the entire space and couldn't find the exit. There was only this peak. It may be an exit or a conspiracy. The young master of the Holy Gate, Ling Chun, frowned slightly. Who cares about the conspiracy? Even if there is a god up there, we will kill him, the young master of the Immortal Palace said coldly. Now that they had gathered all the people who entered the tomb of the god of sin, they had the ability to fight even if there was a god. In that case, let's go up and see what the conspiracy is. The young man of the Heavenly Punisher Palace spoke. At the same time, he rose into the air and flew toward the peak. The young master of the Immortal Palace and the others didn't lag behind and flew up directly. Stone Coffin. Muronyu's speed was extremely fast. He rushed to the top of the mountain almost instantly. There was a huge square on the top of the mountain, and at the end of the square, there was an ordinary stone coffin. It was obviously an exaggeration to say that it was ordinary. The surface of the stone coffin was rough, and everything seemed to be crudely made. It was placed on the ground like this, and there was even some moss on it. It was just like what one would see in the secular world, and it was even worse than the stone coffins in the secular world. However, Muronyu didn't underestimate this stone coffin that seemed to be crudely made. As the saying went, if things were abnormal, there must be a demon. In this space, with such great pressure, how could there be an ordinary stone coffin that looked like one from the secular world? It should be known that even the experts of the Nine Heavens Xian immortal realm couldn't survive in the space of the tomb of the god of sin. They would be crushed in the first place. The sarcophagus lay there quietly. The blood in the void continuously flowed towards the sarcophagus and entered the sarcophagus. The stone coffin was like a black hole that would never be filled. It was constantly absorbing the blood in the void. Seeing this scene, Muronyu's face turned ugly. The blood was rushing into the stone coffin. Obviously, someone was absorbing the blood. Muronyu was basically sure of his guess. The existence in the stone coffin was bloodstains, using the blood of countless demonic beasts and immortals. Perhaps he was reviving? Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Just as Muronyu was looking at the stone coffin with an ugly expression, countless figures rushed up and appeared near Muronyu. It's you. Ling Chun saw Muronyu at first glance, and he sneered. Boom! Ling Chun attacked, and a punch was aimed at Muronyu. A cold light flashed in Muronyu's eyes. His figure flashed, and he disappeared on the spot. Boom! Terrifying power poured down, directly bombarding the open space of the square, causing the ground to tremble. However, it was unable to shatter the ground. Not even a crack was formed. Wait! Muronyu turned to look at the young master of the sacred gate and said in a deep voice, I know you want to kill me, but shouldn't we deal with this first? While speaking, Muronyu pointed at the strange stone coffin. You don't have to worry about this. After killing you, we'll naturally deal with it. Ling Chun sneered, took a few steps forward, and launched a violent attack on Muronyu. Muronyu frowned slightly. He didn't want to fight with others now. Although he could resist Ling Chun's attack, there were still people behind Ling Chun. Some immortal venerables were eyeing him covetously. Even if Murong you could defeat Ling Chun, those immortal venerables behind him wouldn't let him go. Moreover, the most important thing now wasn't how to defeat these people. The stone coffin was too strange. Murong, you had a feeling. If they didn't destroy the existence in the stone coffin, they wouldn't be able to escape death. Chapter 700. Ling Chun, hold on. Just as Ling Chun was about to kill Murong Yu, the young master of the immortal palace, Yu Xian, suddenly called out to her, "Stop." Ling Chun frowned and his face darkened. Without looking, he said coldly, "Yu Xian, this is my private matter. Don't meddle in other people's business." Ling Chun, look at the sarcophagus first. The person in charge of the devil sect said coldly. Huh? Murong Yu took a few steps back and looked at the sarcophagus. At this time, the sarcophagus was different from the one Murong Yu saw before. The entire sarcophagus had turned blood red, as if it was oozing blood. What's more, vein-like things appeared on the stone coffin. They were densely intertwined on the stone coffin, which made people's hair stand on end. It was extremely terrifying and mysterious. At the same time, a brutal, terrifying, and tyrannical aura was slowly emitted from the sarcophagus. With the sarcophagus as the center, it swept in all directions like a torrential river, sweeping across the world. Not good. Something is coming out. Everyone present was a top expert. How could they not know the horror of the sarcophagus? They all knew that if the thing in the sarcophagus appeared, the consequences would be unimaginable. Attack, destroy that sarcophagus. The young master of the immortal palace roared and was the first to attack. He exploded with a terrifying force towards the sarcophagus. At the same time, the others also attacked, releasing a powerful force that could destroy heaven and earth. It tore through the void and strangled the sarcophagus. The power of countless people, including many immortal venerables, attacked at the same time. How terrifying was this power when gathered together? In the immortal world, it could tear through everything and was invincible. Any expert who encountered such a situation would run away at the sight of it. Rumble. A terrifying force blasted down and bombarded the sarcophagus. It made a series of earth-shattering noises. However, what made everyone present feel a chill in their hearts was that their attacks could not even shake the stone coffin, let alone destroy it. The sarcophagus was like an immemorial divine mountain standing on the spot. No matter how violent and terrifying the power was, it still stood firm. However, this was not the most frightening thing. What made their hearts palpitate was that after their attacks hit the stone coffin, they disappeared without a trace like clay oxen entering the sea. That was terrifying. At this moment, the stone coffin was even redder than before. It was oozing with blood, as if it was about to drip out. As for those intricate meridian-like existences that wrapped around the stone coffin, they began to swell like blood vessels. They even began to gently pulsate. Seeing this scene, everyone present couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. They didn't know what this thing was. However, they all knew that this stone coffin was very strange. If the person inside the stone coffin were to come out, it might be their doomsday. Attack, attack, destroy this sarcophagus. Suddenly, countless violent forces poured out again, wanting to destroy the sarcophagus. However, no matter how they attacked, their power was like a clay ox entering the sea, disappearing without a trace the moment they got close to the stone coffin. Seeing this strange scene, everyone felt a chill in their hearts. One by one, they attacked without any regard for their lives. Everyone was attacking with all their might. At the same time, more people rushed forward and joined the attack formation. However, no matter how many people came, no matter how violent their power was, they all disappeared without a trace before they could get close to the sarcophagus. They couldn't hit the sarcophagus at all, let alone destroy it. Crack! Suddenly, the sarcophagus made a crisp sound. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. Then, they saw the lid of the sarcophagus move to the side, revealing a thin crack. Instantly, countless people probed with their divine senses, wanting to see what was buried in the sarcophagus. Morongyu did the same. There's nothing. It's like a vast starry sky, boundless and pitch black. Morongyu probed with his divine senses, but he couldn't see anything in the sarcophagus. Their divine senses couldn't enter at all. Rumble. Suddenly, a terrifying suction force erupted from the sarcophagus. At this moment, Morongyu felt his divine senses being pulled by a force and was about to be pulled into the sarcophagus. Morongyu snorted and immediately cut off his divine senses. He didn't want his divine senses to be sucked into the sarcophagus. Who knew what dangers were inside? This was the tomb of the gods. The existence buried in the tomb of the gods was a god. Once his divine senses were sucked in, who knew if he would be killed? Morongyu cut off his divine senses in time, but there were many people who couldn't do it in time. The moment Morongyu cut off his divine senses, countless screams rang out. Then, Morongyu saw experts being grabbed by an invisible hand and flew toward the sarcophagus at an extremely fast speed. These people struggled and screamed, but it was useless. They were still flying toward the sarcophagus at an extremely fast speed. Morongyu's expression changed slightly. He reached out his hand and caught an immortal lord flying past him. Just as Morongyu caught the immortal lord, a powerful force erupted from the immortal lord's body, and he actually broke free from Morongyu's restraint. Morongyu snorted and grabbed the immortal lord with his big hand and pulled him down. At this moment, the immortal lord who was grabbed by Morongyu let out a shrill scream. Then, Morongyu saw blood spurting out from every pore on the immortal lord's body like a blood mist. In a few breaths' time, the immortal lord shriveled up because of the loss of blood. In the end, he turned into a pile of powder and fell from Morongyu's hand. What a terrifying power! Morongyu's heart skipped a beat. This was an immortal lord. How could he turn into powder just like that? Moreover, this person's death was different from when he was killed by the power of time in the immortal realm. The power of time only used the power of time to erase all of their killing intent. In the end, everything would be erased in the river of time. On the other hand, this immortal lord had his blood essence sucked dry and died. Moreover, the speed at which the blood essence was absorbed was too fast. It was so fast that Morongyu couldn't react in time. It wasn't just Morongyu who was like this. The other immortals were the same. It was the same for those who were sucked dry. They didn't even get close to the stone coffin before their blood essence was sucked dry. They turned into powder and scattered between heaven and earth. How terrifying! Seeing this scene, the few trillion immortals present were so frightened that their faces turned pale. Even those immortal supremacies were the same. This was because they didn't know what had sucked their blood essence dry. They even felt that if they were caught, they wouldn't be able to resist. In the end, they would also end up like these immortals, turning into powder and disappearing between heaven and earth. Hiss! The few trillion immortals sucked in a breath of cold air and retreated in fear. Rumble! The suction from the stone coffin was even more terrifying now, forming a storm. Suddenly, a terrifying power burst out, pulling everything to the side of the coffin. Many immortals who weren't strong enough couldn't resist the suction and were sucked over. Their blood essence was sucked dry midway, and they turned into powder, disappearing between heaven and earth. Rumble! At the same time, the entire divine tomb began to change. Gusts of wild wind appeared out of thin air. The scent of blood drifting between heaven and earth flooded in from all directions and rushed toward the stone coffin. The stone coffin is absorbing the blood essence. There must be a terrifying existence inside. He's going to absorb the blood essence to revive himself. We can't let him come back to life. We must destroy him. Everyone would be fools if they didn't realize what was going on when they saw this. The existence inside the stone coffin hadn't come back to life yet, but he'd already devised such a huge scheme. He'd lured countless immortals into the divine tomb and sacrificed them to bring himself back to life. Such methods, such brutality, and such cruelty. If he came back to life, everyone present and even the entire world of immortals would be sacrificed. Kill. Destroy him. One by one, the experts roared and unleashed their strongest attacks at the sarcophagus. However, they couldn't do anything to the stone coffin before, so how could they do anything to it now? Countless immortals were crushed by the suction force before they could even get close to the stone coffin. The suction force became more and more terrifying. Many immortals who weren't strong enough were sucked in. The more blood essence it absorbed, the more terrifying the aura inside the stone coffin became. Those below Immortal Monarch retreat immediately. No, those below Immortal Emperor leave this place immediately. Those above Immortal Emperor start attacking. Someone shouted. Immortal kings and immortal monarchs were absolute powerhouses in the immortal world. But here, they were useless. They could only let the stone coffin absorb their blood essence. It was better to let them leave this place. This way, the stone coffin wouldn't be able to absorb enough blood essence and wouldn't be so terrifying. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Countless immortal kings and immortal monarchs retreated. Those above Immortal Emperor unleashed their strongest attacks, trying to destroy the stone coffin. Crack, crack. The coffin lid moved continuously, and the crack grew bigger. Suddenly, a withered hand that was only skin and bones slowly reached out from the stone coffin. Boom! The hand shook violently, and the coffin lid was instantly sent flying. Then, a withered man that didn't look human slowly stood up from the stone coffin. An extremely terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth was emitted from his body, tearing apart heaven and earth and annihilating the void. Chapter 701. Bang, bang, bang. A terrifying aura spread out in all directions, instantly suppressing all the worlds. In an instant, those immortal kings and immortal monarchs who had not retreated in time exploded under the pressure of this terrifying power. After a series of explosions, countless immortal kings and immortal monarchs were blown into clouds of blood mist. And in the void, there seemed to be invisible giant hands that kept grabbing the blood mist toward the person in the coffin. Then, under the horrified gazes of Murong Yu and the others, the mist of blood quickly entered the shriveled body of the man that no longer resembled a human. Kill him quickly, someone in the crowd roared. Immediately, an even more terrifying power poured out, strangling the withered man. Ha! After countless days and months of waiting, this god has finally been resurrected. All of you trash, become nourishment for this god's body and nourish it. An unpleasant voice came out of the shriveled mouth, shaking the void and causing it to collapse piece by piece. This god, Murong Yu, was not shocked by the aura and sound waves of the withered man, or rather the god. However, he was stunned by the other party's words. A resurrected god. Murong Yu's expression changed instantly, and at the same time, the others were the same. What was a god? A god was above an immortal. Even the most powerful immortal, as long as he was still an immortal, was an ant-like existence in the eyes of a god. A god, even the lowest level one, had the power to easily destroy the immortal world. Destroy the immortal world. And now, a god had been resurrected. Moreover, this god was obviously not a good person. As he spoke, the god made his move. His emaciated palm slowly pressed upwards. Boom! After a loud explosion, the power of the countless experts would be shattered. Ant-like existences dare to attack me? All of you die. Obviously, being attacked by so many ants, although they could not do anything to him, this god was still very angry. Therefore, he reached out his big hand and slowly grabbed at Murong Yu and the others. Bang, bang, bang. An extremely terrifying power appeared out of thin air. Instantly, countless immortals exploded again, turning into a bloody mist that was finally absorbed by the god. And Murong Yu saw that after absorbing so much blood essence, the god's body gradually became fuller. He knew that as long as this god absorbed enough blood essence, his body would completely recover. He would even recover to his peak state. The appearance of a peak god in the immortal world was definitely a disaster for the immortal world. He could definitely sweep through the immortal world and be invincible. Even before the giant hand reached out and attacked, there were already hundreds of millions of experts who were killed. Endless amounts of blood essence was like a tidal wave and was absorbed by the god. However, the god did not seem to be satisfied with this situation. The giant hand shook the giant's hand quickly. In that instant, Moronu felt an extremely frightening pressure pressing down on him. The terrifying power squeezed from all directions. It actually sealed all the void space around him. Moronu's face changed. His figure blurred as he shot towards the distance. The god's power was too terrifying. He could not resist. Staying here was just waiting for death. Dying. Seeing the god's giant hand coming down, countless immortals roared and attacked the giant hand with their strongest attacks. However, what made them despair was that their attacks were shattered before they could even get close to the giant hand. The difference in power between the two sides was too great. It was so great that even a few trillion immortals were no match for the god. A god was a god after all. Even if he had just been resurrected, he was still not someone that immortals could fight. Ants were ants after all. No matter how many of them there were, they were still ants. This was something that could not be changed. Run, seeing that a few trillion immortals attacked at the same time, but they could not stop the god's giant hand for a moment. Everyone present was in despair. No one dared to stay on the spot. They all used their speed to escape into the distance. Run? Where are you running to? Anyone who enters the tomb of the god will die. Your blood essence will be sucked dry by me. Even this immortal realm will be sacrificed by me. Ha ha! The god laughed and suddenly clenched his giant hand in the void. Bang! 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 This time, not only were the immortal kings and immortal monarchs crushed, even the immortal emperors couldn't withstand this terrifying power and were directly crushed into pieces. With a squeeze, hundreds of millions of immortals were crushed to death. In the end, only a small number of immortal emperors and immortal monarchs escaped. Puff! Moronu spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was full of shock. Just now, he had retreated hundreds of millions of miles. However, the god's attack still enveloped him. If he had not used the Hichu Luoshu, he would have been crushed. However, even so, he was seriously injured. Within hundreds of millions of miles, most of the immortals had been killed. Endless amounts of blood essence surged toward the god like a torrent, nourishing his body. At this moment, if someone was near the deity, they would see that after absorbing a large amount of blood essence, the deity's originally withered body had gradually become plump and full of life. Just think about it. Even if the ones killed were only immortals and their blood essence had no effect on the god, how terrifying would the blood essence of trillions of immortals be? Even a god would benefit immensely from it. Run? Where are you running to? The god sneered, then suddenly opened his mouth and sucked in a deep breath. Whoosh! 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 At the same time, a terrifying suction force appeared in the great tomb of the god. Everything in the entire space was being sucked in. Bang! 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 Everything, even the towering mountains, was sucked up by the suction force and shot toward the god. When they got close enough to the god, they all exploded and turned into dust. Some of the immortals and powerful demonic beasts that hadn't been killed exploded into a mist of blood and were absorbed by the demonic beasts. Even the top experts of the immortal world, the immortal venerables, couldn't do anything about it. In front of the god, whether they were immortal venerables, immortal emperors, or immortals of other realms, they all had the same status. They were all ants. How terrifying. Invincible. Moronu summoned the Hichu, Luoshu, and madly circulated its power. But there was nothing he could do. He was still sucked back. The young master of the immortal palace, the young master of the sacred gate, and other experts were the same. Hey, you have a Hichu Luoshu? Haha. Hichu Luoshu. I actually found it in this low-level immortal world. How could an ant like you have it? What a waste. Give it to me. As he spoke, the god stretched out his hand and grabbed at Moronu. Boom! When the god said the words Hichu Luoshu, Murong Yu's head suddenly exploded like thunder. He was almost dizzy from the explosion. This was the first time someone recognized that he had the Hichu Luoshu. Moreover, he had said it out loud in front of everyone. The Immortal Palace also suspected that he had the Hichu Luoshu, but they didn't announce it to the public because they wanted to keep it for themselves. But this god said it without any scruples, which showed that the god was determined to get the Hichu Luoshu. Crack, crack, the big hand reached out. Before it even got close to Murong Yu, the terrifying power had already crushed Murong Yu's body. This person is too powerful. Even if I use the bow of heaven and earth and the sky-shaking arrow, I can't do anything to him. No, I have to leave the tomb of the god of sin. If I don't leave here, I will die in the end. Murong Yu roared in his heart. There was even a trace of fear in his heart. Yes, it was fear. This god was too powerful, so powerful that he felt fear. What a mortal sovereign! What Yin-Yu? In front of this god, they were nothing. Murong Yu even felt that if Yin-Yu, who was in the immortal sovereign realm, was in front of this god, he would most likely be blown to death by this god. The power of the world's origin, bless my body and teleport me. Murong Yu roared in his heart. He actually wanted to leave here directly. The god was very excited. Not only did he finally use the blood of these ants to revive himself, but he also found the Hichu Luoshu here. What was the Hichu Luoshu? In the god realm, who didn't know the power of the Hichu Luoshu? Just the fact that it could carry living people and the space inside was like a real big world was enough to make countless people go crazy and set off a storm of blood. Not to mention the various treasures inside. In truth, there were no treasures inside the He2 and the Book of the Luo. The various treasures left behind by the previous owners of the He2 and the Book of the Luo had long been burned by Zhao Yun when he was risking his life. Moreover, the Hichu Luoshu was a powerful magic treasure that could be used for both offense and defense. When Murong Yu first obtained those treasures, it was only because those pills and treasures were too low grade that they weren't burned. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gotten anything from the He2 and the Luoshu. Of course, even if there was nothing inside, the Hichu Luoshu was still one of the most miraculous treasures in the world. As long as I obtain the Hichu Luoshu and the treasures inside, I can quickly recover to my peak. Then I can return to the god realm and sweep through everything, invincible under the heavens. The god roared in his heart. He was incomparably happy. However, very quickly, the joy in his heart turned into anger. Because just as he was about to catch Murong Yu disappeared into thin air. Hiding in the Hichu Luoshu? Let's see where you can hide. In the divine tomb, I am the ruler. Come out. The god roared in anger. Waves of terrifying power erupted continuously, causing the entire divine tomb to tremble. The vault of heaven, the void, and the earth all shattered. Chapter 702. In the origin space of the Huaxia cultivation world. Whoosh! A figure broke through the endless space-time and appeared here in the blink of an eye. Then, the figure spat out a mouthful of blood. Then, he sat down cross-legged and began to recover. This person was Murong Yu, who had escaped from the tomb of the god of sin. He had used the power of the origin to escape back to the cultivation world. This was the first time he had used the power of the origin to escape. However, he had no other choice. Murong Yu couldn't find the exit in the tomb of the god of sin, nor could he enter the Hichu Luoshu world. If he hadn't been able to teleport directly back to the cultivation world, he would have died. After adjusting his breathing, Murong Yu's figure flashed and disappeared from the origin space, arriving in the Hichu Luoshu world. His injuries were so serious that he needed to speed up his recovery in the Hichu Luoshu. Otherwise, it would take a very long time for him to recover in the outside world. In the end, it would be too late. A day later in the outside world, Murong Yu reappeared in the source space. His injuries were completely healed, and he had already recovered to his peak. In fact, He had even made some progress. In reality, Murong had been recuperating for several hundred years. After appearing in the origin world, Murong didn't leave immediately. Instead, he pondered. The person in the coffin was obviously a god. This god who had fallen had used some underhanded means to descend into the world of immortals and then carried out a blood sacrifice, killing countless immortals and finally resurrecting himself. This person's methods were extremely cruel and brutal. In order to resurrect himself, he had killed so many people. It was hard to imagine what kind of disaster he would cause once he appeared in the world of immortals. This guy had once said that he would sacrifice the entire world of immortals. Murong would never doubt the authenticity of his words. And this resurrected god was so strong that he could absolutely sweep across the entire world of immortals and be invincible. Even immortal venerables couldn't possibly be his match. They wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow. A calamity for the immortal realm. Murong suddenly sighed. He was not someone who bemoaned the state of the universe and pitted the fate of mankind, nor was he a good person who wanted to save the world. However, if this god wanted to sacrifice the entire immortal realm, Murong would have no place to live. Shenzhen, the celestial palace, and even the heavenly court would all be destroyed. Everything that Murong had worked so hard for would be lost. This was something he didn't want to happen. However, with his current strength, there was no way he could fight against that god. Perhaps when he reached the immortal venerable realm, he would have the strength to fight against deity. However, it was almost impossible for him to kill deity. That person actually knows about Hichu Luoshu. Murong's face was somewhat gloomy. He didn't expect that this god would be able to tell that he had Hichu Luoshu on him at first glance. In this way, as long as Murong appeared in the immortal realm, he would become the target of countless people in the immortal realm. After all, this was the Hichu Luoshu, an extremely real and enormous world. Especially after the appearance of this god, people in the immortal realm wanted to obtain Hichu Luoshu even more. Why was this? Because once he obtained Hichu Luoshu, he could relocate all of his forces to the Hichu Luoshu world. In this way, even if that person sacrificed the entire immortal realm, his forces in the Hichu Luoshu world wouldn't suffer any losses. In this way, Murong would not only have to face this incomparably powerful opponent, but also the entire immortal realm. I hope that more people don't know about the existence of Hichu Luoshu. Murong thought. However, he knew that this was impossible. That god definitely knew about Hichu Luoshu, and at that time, many immortals around Murong knew that he had Hichu Luoshu. Murong had the means to leave the tomb of the gods and escape from the gods' pursuit, so others should also have a means, especially the young masters of the immortal palace and sacred gate. Murong didn't believe that they would be killed by the god like that. No matter what, I'll deal with whatever comes my way. If one comes, I'll kill one. If two come, I'll kill two. Murong said with a murderous aura. Then, his body swayed and disappeared on the spot. In the origin space of the Daluo world of cultivation, Murong's figure appeared out of thin air. He planned to first become the enforcer of the Daluo world of cultivation and completely control the Daluo world of cultivation. In this way, Murong's strength would become even stronger, and it might even be possible for him to break through to the immortal monarch realm. The stronger he was, the more means Murong had to protect himself. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to fight against the many experts in the immortal world, let alone the god. The origin space of the Daluo world of cultivation had long recognized Murong as the enforcer. Murong came this time to be fully recognized and control the Daluo world of cultivation. Therefore, it wasn't difficult. In a short time, Murong controlled the entire Daluo world of cultivation and became the enforcer of the Daluo world of cultivation. Rumble. After truly taking control of the Daluo world of cultivation, rumbling sounds of thunder suddenly sounded from Murong's body. With a series of crackling sounds, Murong's body seemed to be transforming. At this time, Muronyu had already left the origin space of the Daluo world of cultivation and appeared in the Hichu Luoshu world. Time acceleration. Muronyu directly activated the time acceleration and began to cultivate. After completely taking control of the Daluo world of cultivation, my talent has been cleansed and is stronger than before. I feel that the chaotic celestial record is about to break through. This time I must break through. Muronyu roared in his heart and began to break through. Time flowed like water, day after day. No one knew how much time had passed. Suddenly, a loud sound came from Muronyu's body, as if something had broken. At this time, Muronyu couldn't help but roar. I've finally broken through. The third level of the chaotic celestial record. Muronyu roared in his heart. Just now, he'd finally succeeded in comprehending the third level of the chaotic celestial record. He'd successfully broken through the barrier and entered the third level of the chaotic celestial record. Level, break through for me. Countless immortal meridians, burn for me. After the breakthrough of the chaotic celestial record, Muronyu roared in his heart again and grabbed at the void with both hands. Immediately, Grade 9 immortal meridians were pulled out one after another and piled up beside him into mountains. Mountains of immortal meridians. After countless Grade 9 immortal meridians appeared, they immediately burned up. Suddenly, a torrent of power rolled over like a raging wave. It was so powerful that it covered the sky and covered the earth, drowning Muronyu. Muronyu opened his mouth and took a deep breath. Immediately, the endless power turned into a torrent and was sucked in by Muronyu. At the same time, the life force in Muronyu's energy center trembled continuously and absorbed the power of the void, drifting in the void. It replenished Muronyu's body and began to help him break through to the next level. Muronyu's body was completely submerged by the incomparably terrifying power. It even filled every inch of his muscles, bones, and meridians. It was different from the previous times when Muronyu's power level would skyrocket after the breakthrough of the chaotic celestial record. This time, after the breakthrough of the chaotic celestial record, Muronyu didn't break through from the immortal king realm to the immortal duke realm. Muronyu knew the reason. It was because he didn't have enough power. The power stored in his body was far from enough for him to break through the barrier of the next level. After the immortal king realm, every breakthrough required a large amount of power. The higher the level, the more terrifying the power needed. Immortal duke realm, break through. Muronyu roared in his heart. He gathered all his power and began to break through to the next level. Rumble, endless power kept rushing and attacking the barrier between the immortal king realm and the immortal duke realm. Once this barrier was broken, Muronyu would reach the immortal duke realm and his power would skyrocket. Muronyu's physical body had already reached the level of a royal weapon and could be said to be very powerful. However, at that moment, his entire body began to bleed, and cracks began to appear all over his body. This was because he had absorbed too much power. All this power was gathered in his body and couldn't be released. It had exceeded the limit of his body. If he couldn't break through to the next level, this power would cause him to explode and die. I still don't have enough power. Muronyu tried for a long time, but still couldn't break through to the next level. He gritted his teeth. Suddenly, more ninth-grade immortal meridians appeared near him and began to burn. More power was absorbed into his body than before. When the terrifying power broke through to the next level, it also constantly attacked Muronyu's body. At this time, Muronyu even had the aura of a desperate person. It was as if he would either succeed or die trying. If it was in the past, he definitely wouldn't be so anxious. However, it was different now. A resurrected person had appeared in the immortal world. The entire immortal world could be destroyed, and the people of the immortal world could become Muronyu's enemy. If he wasn't strong enough, his fate would be very tragic. Unless he hid in the space of the He-Tu, the Book of the Luo, and the Heavenly Punishment Token, he might die. Hiding in the space of the He-Tu, the Book of the Luo, and the Heavenly Punishment Token, Although he could protect himself, it was almost impossible to achieve greater things in the future. After all, the path of cultivation was to face difficulties head-on and resolve all the dangers along the way. Only then could one reach the end and achieve limitless success. Rumble, Morong began to furiously break through to the next level. After an indeterminate amount of time, one day, Morong body suddenly shook violently. The power that had almost caused his body to explode suddenly seemed to have found an outlet and surged out. At the same time, a terrifying aura that was more than 100 times stronger than before radiated from Morong. Vast, powerful, and terrifying, it soared into the sky and awed the myriad realms. Chapter 703. Kacha. The sound of crystals cracking could be heard from Morong's body. At the same time, a vast aura was emitted from his body. A finally broken through to the immortal monarch realm. Morong couldn't help but exclaim. He had finally broken through to the immortal monarch realm, from the immortal king realm to the immortal monarch realm. Morong let out a long roar that sounded like a dragon's roar to express his joy. However, he didn't stand up and stop cultivating. Immortal Meridian, continue to burn. Continue to break through to the next realm. Morong roared in his heart as he continued to burn his immortal meridian. It turned into a torrent of energy that surged into his body and continued to break through to the next realm. After breaking through to the next realm, Morong's physical body had become even stronger. It had reached the peak of the royal weapon realm and was only one step away from breaking through to the monarch weapon realm. Morong believed that after passing the tribulation, his physical body would break through to the monarch weapon realm. In addition to his strong physical body, his meridians were also 100 times stronger than before. Originally, a large amount of energy surged into his body and almost destroyed his meridians and physical body. However, at this moment, in front of his meridians that had expanded by 100 times, the energy that surged into his body couldn't fill up his meridians. Fortunately, Morong didn't have much, but he had a lot of immortal meridians. He grabbed the grade 9 immortal meridians and burned them. They turned into torrents of energy that surged into his body and quickly replenished his energy. Soon, Morong's energy was replenished to the peak. His cultivation base was also slowly rising under the scouring of these powers. The immortal monarch realm was gradually rising to the peak of the immortal monarch realm. When his cultivation level reached the peak of the immortal monarch realm, Morong's cultivation level was stuck again. This time, Morong didn't risk his life. Instead, he tried to break through to the next realm a few times. After failing to break through to the next realm, Morong gave up. This was because he knew that he couldn't break through to a higher realm. It wasn't because he wasn't strong enough. Rather, it was because his understanding of the chaotic celestial records wasn't deep enough. The second level of the third level of the chaotic celestial record wasn't complete yet. It was only enough for him to reach the heavenly high immortal realm. As such, even if Morong had enough power, he would not be able to break through to a higher realm. Therefore, Morong stopped. Morong stood up, and a crackling sound came from his body. The powerful and terrifying aura slowly retracted into his body. My strength is over 100 times stronger than before. Morong sensed his formidable power and thought. Suddenly, rumble, one after another, the silhouettes of earth dragons appeared above his head. 10,000, 20,000, 100,000, 200,000. In the end, a total of 500,000 silhouettes of earth dragons hovered above Morong's head. They roared continuously, emitting an earth-shattering pressure that shook the heavens and the earth. 500,000 earth dragons of power. If that immortal palace young master or sacred gate young master were to appear in front of me, I would be able to crush him to death. 500,000 earth dragons of power. One should know that ordinary heavenly high immortal experts only had a few thousand earth dragons of power. Even the strongest heavenly high immortal experts didn't have 6,000 earth dragons of power. Even immortal emperors, the strongest immortal emperors, only had 100,000 earth dragons of power. However, Yu, who was only in the heavenly high immortal realm, already had 500,000 earth dragons of power. He could definitely kill any immortal emperor. He was definitely the strongest expert below the immortal supremacy realm. The Immortal Palace Young Master and Sacred Gate Young Master were also peerless geniuses. Their strength far surpassed ordinary heavenly high immortal experts. However, they shouldn't be comparable to Yu. Yu estimated that the earth dragons of the Immortal Palace Young Master and Sacred Gate Young Master should be around 200,000 to 300,000 earth dragons of power. Compared to Yu, there was a difference of 2 to 300,000 earth dragons of power. Yu was more than enough to crush them. Killing them in an instant was as easy as eating and drinking. After all, before his breakthrough, Yu was already able to contend with them for a while. Of course, he was just contending with them. With his speed, it would be difficult for Yu Xian and the others to kill him. However, Yu was still far from being their match. Now, I truly have the strength to fight against an early heavenly high immortal expert. At the very least, it's basically impossible for an early heavenly high immortal expert to kill me. Yu's eyes flickered with killing intent as he pondered. Before this, even though Yu had all kinds of treasures, he couldn't withstand a single strike from an early heavenly high immortal expert. In fact, he was almost killed by Yin Yu twice. An immortal high immortal expert's earth dragons of power had reached 1 million earth dragons of power. Before this, the gap between him and Yu was just too big. It was already a miracle that he could escape from an immortal high immortal expert. If it was an ordinary person, it would be impossible for him to escape. Even a late immortal emperor expert wouldn't be able to escape. The gap between an immortal high immortal and an immortal emperor was just too big. Just in terms of strength, there was a gap of 10 times or even more. Now, an immortal high immortal expert can't kill me, and I can't kill an immortal high immortal expert. However, if I break through to the intermediate immortal monarch realm, I should be able to kill an early heavenly high immortal expert. If I can reach the immortal monarch realm, I'll even have the strength to fight against a god. However, when can I reach the immortal monarch realm? Yu muttered in his heart. He was confident that he could reach the immortal monarch realm and even become a god. However, that required time. What he lacked the most now was time. If it was in the past, you could slowly increase his strength. But now, that god was resurrected in the immortal world. Yu felt that the immortal world had started to become unstable ever since that god was resurrected. He even had a feeling that a storm was coming. However, even if that god is resurrected in the immortal world, his strength shouldn't be able to reach the peak. He shouldn't even be able to unleash the power of a god. Because of the laws of heaven and earth, he should be greatly suppressed. Yu sneered in his heart. If that god was suppressed by the laws of heaven and earth, he wouldn't be that scary. Yu still had the strength to fight against him. Otherwise, if that god was able to unleash the power of a god in the immortal world, you wouldn't be able to survive in the immortal world anymore. 500,000 earth dragons of power. After the tribulation, my physical body can reach the monarch weapon realm. My lifespan has also broken through the limit and reached 2 eras. You couldn't help but be shocked when he sensed his lifespan. In the immortal world, no matter how strong one was, one could only live for 1 era, which was 1 trillion years. This was the limit that no one could break through. However, Yu's lifespan had increased to 2 eras, which was 2 trillion years. However, when he thought of his special constitution, Yu didn't find it strange. He took a deep breath and the power in his meridians surged. It seemed inexhaustible and endless. At this moment, the tree of life in his dantian had grown to a height of 10 million miles. It was truly a towering tree. The tree of life's roots in the void had increased. With every breath Yu took, these roots absorbed an endless amount of power into his body. endless and inexhaustible. From now on, Murong Yu's body wouldn't run out of energy anymore. Even if his energy was depleted, the life force would immediately replenish his strength to its peak. Very good. This is called power. I'll go to the immortal world to undergo the tribulation first. Then I'll go gather information. It's best if I can kill the other enforcers as well. As long as I become an enforcer in the cultivation world, my talent will become stronger and my strength will increase faster and faster. With a flash, Murong Yu disappeared from the Hichu Luoshu world. When he reappeared, he was already in the immortal world. However, he didn't appear near Mo province. Instead, he appeared in Jiang province, a large and remote province. After arriving in the wilderness, Murong Yu attracted his own heavenly tribulation. Immediately, countless bolts of tribulation lightning came crashing down, wanting to crush Murong Yu into pieces. At this moment, Murong Yu's physical body was strong and his strength was even greater. These bolts of tribulation lightning couldn't do anything to him. Murong Yu opened his mouth wide and took a deep breath. Immediately, the bolts of tribulation lightning that came crashing down from the sky were sucked into his stomach. Even the bolts of tribulation lightning in the sky were sucked into his body. Immediately, the tribulation clouds dissipated. Murong Yu's tribulation this time was relatively simple. Rumble, the power of countless bolts of tribulation lightning, was sucked into Murong Yu's stomach. Then, he quickly refined them and spread them to his limbs, meridians, and bones, tempering his physical body. All of a sudden, Murong Yu's body trembled. Then, with a bang, his body exploded into fine powder. The powder that filled the sky floated in the void. However, it didn't dissipate or float away. Instead, it quickly gathered together and began to reassemble. Not long after, Murong Yu appeared in the same place again. However, the current him had undergone an earth-shattering change compared to his previous self. Even though his strength was restrained, his body still exuded a powerful aura. It was very valiant. With every move he made, even when he was standing in the same place, layers of ripples constantly appeared in the void around him. This was because his physical strength was too strong. Even when he was standing there, he could still tear the void apart. One could imagine how terrifying his strength was. The physical body of a monarch weapon. Now, even an early immortal venerable won't be able to crush it. Murong Yu nodded with satisfaction. Although the physical body of a monarch weapon was relatively strong, an immortal venerable could annihilate it with a single slap. However, the physical body of a monarch weapon wasn't as fragile. Murong Yu restrained his strength, turning his body back into an ordinary one. After concealing his strength, he disappeared in a flash. Otherwise, no one would be able to get close to him in his current state. Once someone got close to him, they would be turned into fine powder by his strength. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.